The 1980s.
It was a great decade to grow up in. It was a decade with an identity. It knew its place, what it wanted, where it was going, typified by big stars, original synthwave music, big money, fast cars, and a formidable empire of opposition. Yet underneath it all lurked a darkness that rests in the hearts of all times.
Back in the 80s and early 90s, a wave of troubling accusations swept across North America.
Cocaine, murder, secret lives of rape and pedophilia, drug kingpin, the crack epidemic, the blood plague of HIV and AIDS, which sent shockwaves of fear around the nation.
And it got even stranger.
And intense scrutiny on the activities of satanic cults.
Stories of devil worship and satanic cults corrupting young minds.
Much of what you will hear tonight is just plain horrifying. Satanism, human sacrifice, sexual torture.
There were terrifying tales of secret satanic cults bent on tormenting and corrupting the young.
I think everybody's heard about Satanism. If anybody, you go back to the 60s even, a lot of album covers came out and pentagrams and stuff about Satan.
There were picket lines in Nashville, a record-breaking protest in Little Rock, a standing room only city council meeting in Corpus Christi, and headlines all over the country: Minneapolis, Dubuque, Chattanooga, and Bismarck, North Dakota. The protesters are mainly religious groups who have been trying unsuccessfully to get concerts stopped.
But for many believers, heavy metal remains inextricably tied to the devil, a kind of doorway or portal, like Ouija boards, witchcraft, or other occult practices that can invite the forces of darkness into a person's life.
This is one of the ways that the enemy is coming in to try to engulf the minds of these teenagers and win them over.
I don't think we'd like those people to like us. They're strange.
Guns N' Roses? Forget Guns N' Roses. You need to get into God and Moses.
They're not out here for any Satan worship. It's just rock and roll. That's all it is.
We're talking about sex, drugs, rock and roll, violence. We're talking about a concerted effort to manipulate the human beings of this country into a new order and a new world, and the people are going along with it, docile, and have not the faintest
idea. It says Novus Ordo Seclorum. And I said to myself, what's this all about? I don't know anything about Satanism. I read about it in the Bible, of course, and that's about it.
Satanism, devil worship, is being practiced all across the country.
An increase in teenage homicides and suicides with ritualistic or satanic overtones.
Just barely 14 years old, Tommy Sullivan had written this contract with the devil before he butchered his mother with his Boy Scout knife.
Do you still believe in Satan?
Yeah. He can come into you and make you do wicked stuff and weird things like that.
Animal sacrifices, birds, dogs, church desecrations and burglaries, chalices stolen. They use them to drink the blood of their sacrifices.
You have to give a blood sacrifice to Satan. It's supposed to keep you protected. It's supposed to keep you pure.
It doesn't matter if you believe in Satan. It doesn't matter if you believe in demons. What's important is to know that there are people out there that do.
They were not teenagers dressed in black. There were maybe some in the cult, but no, they were your neighbors. They were the law enforcement officers. They were people in authority. They were the doctors down at the hospital. They were the dentist. They are the prominent, what you would look at as maybe prominent members of the community.
I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type of activities.
Like communist cells in the 1950s, Satan was leading cells all throughout America. Like the communists, Satan was just there, infecting the world.
We in this place declare war on the kingdom of hell and use it.
And I would say that this is almost as an underground epidemic.
Authorities search frantically for evidence of an apparent ritual abuse epidemic across North America.
There are, in my estimation, over 3 million practicing Satanists in America today.
Whether a Satan exists is a matter of belief, but we are certain that Satanism exists. To some, it's a religion. To others, it's the practice of evil in the devil's name. It exists, and it's flourishing.
SRA involves crimes against children that are so horrible that many people don't want to believe it exists.
The children have incredible imaginations. And it's not out of the realm. Anybody who is a parent who is honest knows what kids are capable of saying.
With most people, not only myself, it's such an abhorrent, disgusting thing that I don't think we want to hear it.
When we hear of ritual sacrifices, our reaction is one of horrific avoidance. We say things like, this only happened in the Middle Ages. It doesn't mean that children are not telling the truth.
But the question sparking major debate in psychiatric circles is whether it's real. It is ritual abuse, Satan worship. Thousands of people going public with ghoulish and perverse tales, usually from their childhood.
The essence of what was going on for me as a child is that People were addicted to violence, and people were addicted to getting pleasure, got pleasure out of hurting and killing people.
They would put me in cages. They would sacrifice animals. They would have a lot of candles and chanting and bizarre things I had never seen.
Did people think this was a fantasy, that you'd made this all up? It was such hocus pocus that it couldn't possibly have happened?
Well, I was one of the first to stand up and start to recount these kinds of things and to bring it publicly.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals, and then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice? Were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
That's the baby right there.
Right here?
Uh-huh, it came out of her already.
What'd they do to the baby?
Then David took it and kept throwing it against the wall, and he killed it.
He has drawn pictures of a child being sacrificed. He's talked about animal sacrifices. He's disclosed molestation.
Why do they do such wicked things in these couples?
Because they're pleasing Satan. The lower you become, the more vile you become, the more pleased Satan is with you, and therefore the more power you'll get when you die.
And they believe this?
They believe it. They absolutely believe it.
He was called Lucifer.
What did they say about the devil?
That killing the people made him happy.
What did they say the devil would do to you?
They said that if we told that the devil would come and kill our parents,
What were they doing to you?
molesting me,
What does that mean? What does molesting you mean?
touching us in places we don't want, and then they would threaten us oh, you don't say a word else, we're going to come to your house and kill everybody.
That was part of the scare tactics. This could happen to your mom and dad if you tell about anything that's happened.
As the children disclosed, I became more and more distressed at what they were telling me, because they were telling me things that you only saw in horror films and read in fictitious books.
The father had 10 children. He ritually sexually abused them in every way possible. Those 10 children were eventually taken into care. Those 10 children became adults, and between them they had 23 children. Subsequently, the grandfather, those 10 adults and now the 23 children were all involved in ritual abuse, and grandfather and those 10 adults sexually abused those children in every way possible in a satanic way.
NSPCC, which is our National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, their inspectors that look after children at risk all over the country were reporting that throughout the United Kingdom they were finding evidence of satanic abuse.
As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations.
Of course, I was a generational Satanist, what they call a generational Satanist, and what that means is that my family was involved in it, and their family before them.
When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
I've been told by people that know a lot more than I do that the reason for all of this death and murder is because of the belief in the demons and the power that they can get from that. And these people believe that the more innocent the victim, the more horrible the death, the closer you are at the moment of death, the more magic is released and the more spiritual power they get.
Who was the leader? Who was the boss of the gang, of the cult?
At home it was my nan.
Your nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man.
The part that made me believe this child's story was that when he finally said, this baby, he talked about several, but this particular baby had been killed, stabbed again in a different way, but stabbed. He curled up in a fetal position. He was 9 years old when he was telling the story. He curled up in a fetal position, and his eyes got real glazed, and he said they cooked that baby on the grill. He then went on and told us how they would cut out the heart, or they would cut off the sex organs. They would save them in the refrigerator, in the freezer, and this is a very typical thing that these kids talk about. They worship the sex organs.
Baby killings, ritualistic rape, cannibalism. It seems like the stuff of supermarket tabloids or trash TV.
I need each one of you to know this is not a fairy tale. This is not something out of science fiction. I was a mom who ran a charity and baked oatmeal cookies for my kids. And because my children are victims, I have to stand here and I have to tell you these horrible stories. This cannot happen to any more children.
We could dismiss all of this easily, except for so many similar stories told by so many survivors.
I guess the thing that's most compelling to me as a clinician is to hear reports from a variety of patients who do not have contact with each other, who report very similar stories.
While most ritual abuse cases never come to trial, there have been several criminal prosecutions that resulted in convictions. In most cases, the ritual aspect was not introduced in court, but was clearly indicated by the accounts of the victims. Numerous civil cases incorporating claims of ritual abuse have been successfully litigated.
In Dade County, Florida, Frank Fuster and his wife were convicted of ritually abusing children at the daycare center they operated in their home. Children at the center said the Fusters made them drink urine, eat feces, and engage in sex acts during preschool games. The case horrified the community, and the prosecutor called the Fusters' systematic abuse of the children, quote, outrageous.
In the very places created to care for children, in nurseries and daycare centers across the nation, there are increasing reports of ritual sexual abuse.
Allegations of physical and sexual abuse of children at a babysitting service. Dark world of ritualistic child abuse.
There's a widely held opinion that what happened at the daycare was the devil's handiwork.
There was an explosion of daycare sex abuse scandals like the Kelly Michaels case in the last decade. The most notorious, perhaps the one that ignited them all, happened at the McMartin preschool in Manhattan Beach, California.
Let's talk about the McMartin case.
In 1983, a mother of one of the Manhattan Beach, California preschools, known as the McMartin Preschool, reported to police that her son had been sodomized. It was reported that the child had bleeding coming out of his rectum, and he was telling police officers about the sexual abuse that he had endured by a teacher at the McMartin Preschool, Ray Bucky.
But it quickly grew.
More than 100 counts of child with 208 counts.
Until there were 7 defendants.
More than 300 charges.
And hundreds of charges.
Over 1,200 children came forward and reported that they had been victims of not only sexual abuse, but being forced to perform sexual acts on adults as well.
Authorities now believe that at least 60 young children were victimized, and that the ultimate number could well be much greater.
1,400 children in this community have been ritualistically abused.
Those children, some of them as young as 2 years old, were photographed by the suspects.
Kiddie porn was the primary purpose for the alleged sexual abuse of children. Some children allege that a living creature was sacrificed on the church's altar.
The truth about Satanism is they truly do use blood, and they mix it with urine, and then they also use the real meat, the real flesh. This is what makes Satanism true. And this is what 1,200 molested kids in the city of Manhattan Beach have told the sheriff's department.
7 nursery school teachers were arraigned today on more than 100 counts of child molestation.
The accused include the preschool owner, 76-year-old Virginia McMartin, her daughter, and 2 grandchildren.
Ray Bucky was the grandson of the school founder Virginia McMartin and son of Administrator Peggy McMartin Bucky.
I think adults have had a lot of influence on the children.
Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann. Hi. Their mother, Peggy McMartin Bucky, grandmother Virginia McMartin, and 3 teachers were all charged with sexually abusing 18 children at the McMartin preschool.
Virginia McMartin, her daughter, 2 grandchildren, and 3 other teachers were ultimately indicted on more than 300 counts of molestation.
The kids, there were 5,500 kids that went through that school over a period from 1966 until this situation was alleged to have occurred, the molestation of kids. The parents would drop the kids off there in the morning, go to work, come back at night, pick them up. And long story short, there were, some of the kids claimed that they were molested during that period.
Just as there are families with strong feelings about the McMartin case, there are those with serious doubts.
There's no case. The case should never have gone to trial.
Newspaperman Cody covered the McMartin trial and says the real culprits in the case were the social workers that investigated the early McMartin complaints.
In my opinion, the therapist led the kids into making these false disclosures.
We have heard it 100 times or more from children. The same things, the same games, the same description.
No pornography that could be linked to the abuse that the children were describing has ever been found.
There should have been little animal carcasses. There should have been bodily fluids all over the preschool. They didn't have any of that.
You think those kids were abused?
There is no evidence presented, to my mind, that the kids were abused.
It was obvious in the interviews that all kinds of techniques were highly suggestible, highly pressuring, and is capable of creating false memories of abuse in children, often permanent memories. Children don't make up elaborate lies that this would have to be if it was a lie, which I know it is not.
So the defense used this as an argument saying that they were leading the witnesses, that they were manipulating these children by the Children's Institute International, the CII of Los Angeles, which was a Los Angeles abuse therapy clinic run by Key McFarland. They claim the interviewing techniques used during investigations of the allegations were highly suggestive and invited children to pretend or speculate about supposed events.
The parents start to talk to their kids, and then they start to talk to each other, and then they start to compare notes, and pretty soon emotionally involved parents are engaging in leading and suggestive questioning of the child.
I mean, I don't know how many times over the years I've thought, well, maybe they really did. Maybe they did brainwash our kids, and this is all just a bunch of baloney, and we'll just wake up from this bad dream. But the reality, I don't think that's the reality.
Mary Mae Chiaothi's daughter, Elizabeth, was 3 when she attended the McMartin preschool. She's 13 now.
Is there any question in your mind it happened?
No.
Is it possible at all, when you look back now, that some of these memories you have are memories that the therapist told you about, that may not be your own memories?
No, there's no doubt.
I remember tunnels. They were kind of like a subway tunnel, but it was a long, like a circular tunnel, and there were lamps, like the oil lamps, every so often, and it was a dark tunnel, and there were pictures of the devil on the wall.
And the tunnel went right on across, all the way over to this wall. The children said that they were taken down into the tunnel and brought up into this triplex next door, and then they were placed in cars and taken out into the communities and prostituted. They were involved in various ceremonies, including ceremonies in a chamber underneath the school. They claimed there were tunnels under the school. They claimed they were molested under the school. They claimed there were children that were sacrificed, the satanic type ceremonies, adults in robes chanting without any clothes underneath and candles, the whole 9 yards.
We were probing all over the school trying to find some evidence of tunnels, and it was like finding a needle in a haystack, really.
In 1985, the district attorney looked for tunnels at the site but found no sign of them.
The authorities received this complaint in 1983. They began their investigation. The authorities finally, in 1985, went out and decided to look for the tunnels because they said the children were hallucinating.
Prosecutors came in about 2 or 3 days and lifted tile, and they didn't see any indication that there was any break in the floor, and that's all they did.
This was the wall, the west wall.
After the acquittals, Ted Gunderson helped Jackie McGauley
The backhoe went straight down the
lead an excavation at the McMartin site. They say the dig revealed that tunnels once existed under the school.
It was about almost a 50-foot tunnel.
Through it all, the Buckies remain steadfast about their innocence.
When I'm very nervous, I probably said some things that are not quite correct, and I'll grant it and I'll admit that.
Including Mr. Bucky, whether or not you molested children in the pit?
No, Mr. When I know that I did not molest children ever in my life.
Hung jury on Ray Bucky, the accused, and Virginia, the grandmother, was acquitted, and they retried Ray Bucky in the second trial. I had an opportunity to take control of the property. Within 34 days, we documented that there had been tunnels under the school. The kids said they were taken through the tunnels, up into a trap door, the triplex next door, hid in automobiles, and prostituted. 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old children taken out in the community used as tools. So we documented that there were tunnels on the school that had been filled in. I called the DA in the second trial. The DA refused to do anything about it.
The tunnels found at McMartin Preschool. A preliminary report.
We found a 9-foot wide subterranean entrance under the west wall of dog room. There were 4 classrooms. That was Ray Bucky's room.
45-foot tunnel. 9-foot wide subterranean entrance found under west wall of the, quote, dog room, classroom 4, blank classroom.
A 45-foot tunnel, 9-foot wide, subterranean entrance found under the west wall of the dog room, classroom 4. Avocado tree roots on both sides of the entrance.
A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel across classroom 4. The top of the chamber and the top of sections of the tunnel had layers of plywood covered with tar paper, which had apparently been supported by cinder blocks and 2x2 and 2x4 wooden posts found underneath. Tunnel features made it evident that the tunnels had been hand dug.
Tunnels were 30 inches wide to 44 to 46 inches deep, with the top of the tunnel 30 inches under the classroom floor. The footing between classroom 3 and 4 was arched, where the tunnel passed beneath and was 12 inches shorter in depth at this location.
The tunnel proceeded south, then 45 feet through classroom 4 and 3 and north, then 10 feet within the classroom 4. The tunnels were 30 inches wide, 44 to 46 inches deep, with the top of the tunnel 30 inches under the classroom floor. The children were able to walk through it. We're talking about young kids now, right? The adults had to stoop down and walk through it, but they could do it.
4 large upright containers were found in the tunnels under the arch, obviously hand-placed. A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel under classroom floor, or classroom 4.
4 large upright containers were found in the tunnel under the arch, obviously hand-placed. A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel. Tunnel features made it evident that tunnel was hand dug. 7-foot tunnel extending into the triplex next door.
7-foot tunnel extending into the triplex next door. Tunnels extended within the bathrooms of the office in Classroom 1 to the front yard of the triplex next door. Children described entering and exiting tunnel in the triplex yard exactly where the tunnel and exit were found.
Tunnel extended from the bathrooms off the office in Classroom 1 to the front yard of the triplex next door. Front yard concealed from street by 3-car garage. Children described entrance and exiting tunnel in triplex yard exactly where the tunnel and exit were found. A small white plastic plate with 3 pentagrams hand-drawn on top of light green paint was found by the archaeologist in the stratified dirt in the play yard. Per historical archaeologist, pentagrams were hand-drawn by an adult and not part of the manufacturer's design.
No doorknobs were on Classroom 3's door, only a deadbolt lock. Each classroom had an on and off light switch labeled with fire alarm. System did not connect to fire station, but was used as an alert within the school. More than 2,000 artifacts were found under the school floor, including over 100 animal bones.
So before the media had even finished doing the smear job on these children and on the social workers who helped them to say what had happened, the FBI knew for a fact that what the children were saying was absolutely fucking true. The FBI report here says that the tunnels are exactly where the children say, and inside the tunnels, there are a lot of animal corpses, and there are pentagrams on the fucking floor. Okay, case closed.
And people said, that's satanic panic. These kids have been coached into giving these answers. This never happened. And yet, in the FBI report, there's an archaeologist paper talking about it doesn't speculate that there are tunnels. It said we went into the tunnels. In the tunnels. He's talking about being in the fucking tunnels. Finding containers in the tunnels. Finding pentagrams and shit in the tunnels. Finding hundreds of animal bones in the fucking tunnels. The tunnel exits exactly where the children said it would exit. What the fuck is going on?
The jury could not agree on 13 counts against Raymond Buckey. So 6 months later, prosecutors brought him back to court. Once again, the jury was deadlocked.
Therefore, there's legal necessity to declare a mistrial.
And with that declaration, one of the longest, most expensive criminal trials in U.S. history finally came to an end.
I'm glad it's over.
Wake up, America. This is your wake-up call.
I want people to know that it did go on and that it still does and that it probably still will go on.
We believe the children because once upon a time, we were the children and nobody believed us.
These people, the satanic movement in the world, has set up preschools throughout the world for the purpose of getting their hands on our children.
Do you dismiss that as a child's fantasy, or do you take it seriously?
Well, as a policeman and as a father, I obviously take it very seriously. Very seriously indeed.
Now, if satanic abuse is really happening, why is it so hard to prove? And if it isn't, why would people make it up?
On April 28, 1991, the Omaha World Herald carried a story along these lines, titled Satanism. Lots of talk, little proof. It said that the problem was not an epidemic of satanic abuse, but rather authorities say America is witnessing an epidemic of concern over Satan and his minions, especially among adherents of fundamentalist Christianity.
What I know clearly, because I've had this argument thousands and thousands of times, is those people who choose to believe that this is going on, there is simply nothing that you can say to them that will change their mind. No matter what you say, they have an explanation.
The Tribune cited Kenneth Lanning, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's expert on occult crime, on the virtual non-existence of ritualistic abuse.
Special Agent Lanning, you've looked into this hundreds of cases. Have you ever found one shred of evidence that this exists?
I think what we need to back up for a moment here, what is very important is to understand that one of the greatest impediments to any meaningful discussion about all of this is the lack of a uniform and consistent definition of what is ritual abuse. Most of these victims describe a whole continuum of victimization, and it's not a matter of it's all true or it's all false. Parts of it can have more validity and accuracy than others. What there isn't any evidence of is the extreme end of what these people describe, and that would be the organized intergenerational cults, the baby breeding, the human sacrifice. It is that part of it for which there is no evidence.
An embattled minority of law enforcement officials disagrees with Lanning of the FBI. Ted Gunderson, a 28-year FBI veteran, former special agent in charge of the Bureau's Los Angeles Field Division, speaks from his personal knowledge of one of the most infamous recent cases involving ritual abuse. Gunderson commented on the effect of Lanning's disclaimers. In my opinion, other than Satanists active in the United States in the 20th century, Aleister Crowley, Anton LaVey, and Michael Aquino Ken Lanning is probably the most effective and foremost speaker for the satanic movement in this country today or any time in the past.
They have to keep making the conspiracy larger and more exotic and more bizarre. So they have to be breeding babies. They didn't record their birth. They're baby breeders. Well, then how come we can't? Well, then the police are part of it. They've infiltrated the police, and they've infiltrated the government, and they've infiltrated the FBI, and the president's involved in it. And now they're not only responsible for child sexual abuse, but they're responsible for pornography.
From there, it went to pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption in the courts, law enforcement, corrupt, prosecutors, corrupt.
And the centerpiece of the entire web is the use of children for sex and drug dealing and drug couriers, the compromising of politicians, the compromising of businessmen, but worst of all, the corruption of key institutions of government that has the duty and responsibility to make sure these things never happen.
And the next major case I'd like to mention is the Nebraska case.
One of the grimmest and most disturbing examples of heinous crimes, institutional corruption, and abuse of political power is said to have occurred back in the 1980s in the heartland of America, and it is known as the Franklin Conspiracy or the Franklin Cover-Up. The conspiracy involved a child pedophilia ring allegedly involving prominent politicians and business leaders in the Omaha, Nebraska area, with ties leading all the way to some of the most powerful circles in Washington, D.C.
Franklin Federal Credit Union scandal, centered in Omaha, opens a window into the hideous world of child abuse and of organized illegal drug peddling, patronized and protected by powerful figures in politics and business.
A major investigation headed up by John DeCamp, former state senator, a good friend of mine.
John is an attorney here in Lincoln. He is also a lobbyist. He's a former state legislator. He's a Vietnam veteran. And we're here to interview John about his new book entitled The Franklin Cover-Up, subtitled Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska. John, how did you get involved in this mess?
Quite accidentally. I had been a senator for about 16 years and come across a man named Larry King, who was the individual who opened those two national conventions, sang the national anthem, was told he was the fastest rising star, particularly fastest rising black star in the Republican Party, and attended some of his largest parties ever put on by him, and from my recollection, probably two of the largest, most expensive parties ever put on by anybody in this country. And so when the Franklin Credit Union failed, I had more than a passing interest in observing and following up and seeing what it was all about.
The credit union was closed, for the information of our viewers, on November 4th of 1988. The FBI and IRS came in and closed it down.
Right.
National media interest in the case flickered in 1988 when the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union was raided by federal agencies and shut down. Franklin's manager was Lawrence E. Larry King Jr., then 44, a rising star in state and national Republican circles, and officer of the National Black Republican Council. King sang the national anthem at the GOP national conventions in 1984 and 1988.
Franklin Federal Credit Union was a small people's bank in Omaha, Nebraska. Larry King was general manager.
Thank you. This is especially an exciting day for me.
Larry King ran the Franklin Credit Union and a few other businesses in Franklin, Nebraska. A man who chartered private jets, hosted extravagant parties, and maintained bodyguards was simply in charge of a credit union in a little town in Nebraska, which happened to be located near Boys Town, a Catholic institution for orphaned youth.
This was supposed to be a $2 million credit union that was just a minority credit union designed to help the black people in the Omaha area. In fact, as they quickly discovered, and we don't even know this is the truth or not the truth at this point, it could be far, far more, but they discovered 40 million missing. Well, when you only have 2 to start, and you have records that show you stole 40, creates some baffling questions.
Nearly $40 million was missing from the coffers of the small, ostensibly community-oriented credit union. The financial scandal turned into something more when it became known that children from Omaha and its surroundings said they had been flown from city to city to be abused at parties held by Franklin's officers and well-known Nebraskans, including nationally prominent Republican Party activists.
And what we developed there was that children were being taken out of orphanages and foster homes, driven to Sioux City, Iowa, 184 miles away, and flown to Washington, D.C. for sex orgy parties with congressmen and senators.
From 1979, Larry King developed close commercial ties to Boys Town, and Boys Town youngsters were sent to work for his companies. Boys Town, Nebraska is America's favorite children's charity.
Located in the heartland of America, Boys Town youth have come from many backgrounds and locales.
King used Boys Town as a source of young boys for his business and for sex and drug orgies.
We didn't go to Nebraska with a conspiracy theory in our mind, hoping to prove it. We went to Nebraska to try and work out what happened.
and we founded a conspiracy asylums.
King's lavish lifestyle burst into flames in 1988, just before the Republican National Convention, when 7 victims of King's child abuse and prostitution stepped forward. The victims claimed that King took them to various parties that he threw for the Republican elite, and at these parties, the children were abused.
Did you know that Larry King was taking boys out of Boys Town?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there was really nobody out there
that didn't know that?
That didn't know that. They know they've had complaints every week on rape and molestation. They know that.
Larry King was, I would say, the center of transporting the children around the country. The airplanes were usually in his name, leased in his name. They were paid for by Larry King.
Larry King was the facilitator. That was the man that was in charge. I mean, we flew with him on the trips, had flown to Chicago, was in a hotel room. I was dressed in a negligee. There were, I believe, prominent men, a lot of young boys at this hotel performing certain things sexually with other men.
The kids he liked were mainly around the age of probably about 8 and 13. It was mainly fondling and oral sex with them. He did have some anal sex, but he usually did that with the older kids.
Didn't care, wanted sex, nasty, I don't even know if you can call it sex, and take it any way he can get it, pay for it, he liked to, but if he had to take it by force, he would.
But children were not merely abused. One victim described an incident at a farm near Elkhorn, Nebraska, in 1981 or 82, where a 10-year-old boy was repeatedly sodomized and beaten by older men. One of the men took up a pitchfork, playfully playing with him at first, but finally sticking one tine into him. While the boy screamed and the other men stood around and laughed, finally the whole pitchfork was stuck through him, killing him. Snuff films were involved as well. Another young boy was taken by someone in the King Circle from Nebraska to another city and forced to perform oral sex on a man. As the abuser reached orgasm, he shot the boy in the head with a pistol, all of which was filmed.
Larry King was more violent, more sure of himself, I would, see him fuck a 10-year-old boy in the ass, until he bled, and, just pull out and stop and, push him down, and then go out and, meet with decent people.
What made the Franklin cover-up case so compelling and downright shocking is that big names were said to be involved. This included not just figures connected with the Franklin Credit Union, but also prominent individuals like a Nebraska court judge, the chief of police in Omaha, and many, many more. In fact, the allegation of involvement also extended to former President George Bush Sr., Dick Cheney, Barney Frank, and many others.
All the kids that I've talked to discussed that they were flown around on small planes, and I have hundreds of receipts. This one is going to Washington, D.C.
He would fly us to nice places or people's houses. There would be gentlemen there. They would like things done to them sexually, or they would like to do things to me sexually.
Some of the parties, when they started off, were straight political type parties, no sex.
So you were in the White House?
Yes.
How did you gain access?
Well, I came down with Larry King.
What time of night?
It was usually around midnight, and it was kind of a gift for our services that we were doing. And then when some of the men had left, some of the politicians had left, the ones that had planned on engaging in some type of sexual activity, that would come after the party.
The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year. The White House press secretary, Harlan Quickwater, said he knew nothing of this investigation.
Homosexual prostitution probe ensnares officials of Bush-Reagan White House. Call boys given a midnight tour of the White House. On the backside, it talks about children being taken off the streets of America. In addition to credit card fraud, the investigation is said to be focused on the illegal interstate prostitution, abduction, and use of minors for sexual perversion, extortions, larceny, and related illicit drug trafficking.
The pedophile ring, homosexual pedophile ring, they were transporting these kids from Omaha to Des Moines, to Minneapolis, to Milwaukee, to Madison, and back to Omaha.
One of King's victims who spoke out 2 years before there even was a Franklin scandal was Paul Bonacci.
He told an incredible tale of an underground network of adults who kidnap and sell children for sex.
But Paul Bonacci, when he was 10, 11, 12 years old, was recruited by these people to be one of them and to act as a buffer and in shopping centers, parks, public places, to attract the children his age over near the car. The adults involved in the ring would grab them and they would kidnap them.
Bonacci claims that an organized ring of pedophiles abducts children and forces them into a life of child pornography and prostitution, and that it happened to him.
And they force you to do things, and they photograph it, they film it. The whole purpose of that is to either blackmail you into staying with them or split your mind up so that you don't even remember who you are.
Paul relayed that at the age of 8, he began attending King's parties as a child prostitute. Paul claimed that Democratic Senator Barney Frank had abused him, and he was given midnight tours of the White House, only to be taken to a separate location shortly thereafter and abused.
In talking to Paul Bonacci, he told me about the number of times when he and others were taken out of schools, private schools in Omaha, driven by limousine to Sioux City, Iowa, and placed on private jets and flown to Washington, D.C. for sex orgy parties with congressmen and senators. Paul told me, and has drawn for me, the living quarters of the White House.
King was also involved in kidnapping.
Oh, yeah.
What knowledge do you have of that?
They'd have what they call catalog kids.
Mm-hmm.
They would basically just go out driving around looking for kids. And they would take pictures of them and go to these wealthy, influential people and say, would you be interested in this one or that one or the next one? And they would basically go snatch them.
They have a crew that goes in certain parts of town, and they ask for the ages. We want them between 6 and 10. And they'll say, we want them all white. And that's what they'll get. We want 3. And we want them in those age brackets. They sent out scouts, just like a scout, but the guy was a perv to decide who he was going to kidnap. And they would take pictures and without their knowledge.
A guy named Rusty Nelson was taking pictures of them while they were doing this sort of thing. And so he had these pictures of these dignitaries who were involved in these nefarious sexual activities.
Rusty Nelson, the photographer for Larry King, attended these parties, documenting powerful men in compromising positions with minors as a form of blackmail for King. In a court hearing in 1999, Rusty Nelson revealed his close relationship with King. Nelson relayed that he had witnessed King phone President Reagan when other individuals couldn't resolve a specific problem. In other words, a man with abuse and child prostitution allegations had a direct line to the then president.
In this springtime of hope, some lights seem eternal. America's is. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless
Rusty, number one, I want people to understand a little bit about you, who you are, how your involvement started with this whole sordid story that we're all into.
Well, I've been a professional photographer for almost 25 years now. When I was first starting out and getting established, going to this bar and taking pictures, they were doing drag shows. It was a gay bar, and I started taking pictures of the drag queens and selling them to the performers. So I mentioned to the owner of the bar that I was looking for some work. I was hinting to him that, I could use the job there. Lo and behold, he hooked me up with Larry King. And I had no idea who Larry King was.
A lot of it was me handcuffed with my hands behind my head and my feet tied. And most of the time, Larry King took pictures quite a bit during that time.
At first it was, everything was all hunky-dory. I didn't see anything wrong with anything at all.
Everything, from just, touching to, fruit, squash, huge squash, that big around, stuck into your ass,
And he had me sit in his office at the credit union and he'd have our meetings and
heat things, hot things, poked at you and stuck in you,
What were you doing and what was going on during this initial phase when you just first started to work with Larry King?
Well, we were going around. He was doing fundraisers and things like that. $5,000 a plate, suppers and things like that. And I was there to take pictures of these parties.
Okay.
Okay. Well, lo and behold, afterwards he was having another party with a few select people, and this was a sex party.
I don't know. And I think I could have said no. Okay. But I don't know.
Okay. And Alicia, you're a victim. And at a young age, let's go off camera for a minute.
basically Larry King was a pimp, and the credit union was just a front.
I got those scars on my arm one night at a party where Larry King was, and you push your arms together. King has these same scars, and you push them tight together, and you light cigarettes, and as soon as they get burning, you just drop them down between your arms, and let it burn. And they made us stand there naked and touch each other by holding our arms together and burn cigarettes. Where, it's on film someplace.
It was one of those things where, by the time I figured out what was going on, I was into it to the point to where I knew I had to protect myself somehow.
Yeah.
And that's where I went in, and I would take pictures from the hip. That's where I'd keep my camera down by my hip, and I'd disconnect the flash cord. And I'd usually drop in, I'd keep a spare roll of high-speed film, and I'd drop that in, and go ahead and start shooting that way, and get pictures of some of the people and who they were with.
Yeah.
And a little bit of what they were doing. For instance, what I've been told, there are 23 children that have been to the White House very quietly. The after-hours tours, yes, they do have them. And the kids that would go there would never be seen again. And they may go a few times or that, but it was all hush-hush.
Yeah.
When they were done with them, it was done.
And you never saw them again?
Nope. The kids they'd get them suited up, and boys on boys, old men with boys. Occasionally they'd have girls. It was a lot of times the younger ones. It was basically white slave trade, where the people would come over and bid on people. There were some of them that I had heard went to Saudi Arabia and some of the Arabic countries over there.
Paul Benassi attended 6 auctions where they auctioned children. Anyway, any age from 3 and 4 all the way up to 21. They put a tag around their neck. They're in their underwear. They have a number on the tag, and people down below bid on them. The kids sell for between $15,000 to $50,000. I've even heard of one kid going for $100,000. Well, who's buying them?
One of the things that really made me worry about how to get out was the fact that I'd seen Robert Wadman.
He was the chief of the Omaha Police Department.
Yes, because I'd watched Robert Wadman, he's chief of police in Omaha at that time, take a stack of $100 bills, probably 1.5 to 2 inches thick, or possibly even thicker, which I figured would be about $50,000. And this, from what I understood, was a weekly payment that he received from Larry King.
A weekly?
For what? For basically keeping things hushed up in Omaha.
Wadman was pretty deeply involved in abuse of the kids, was he not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the girls that he frequented was Alicia Owen.
Okay. I do remember that Alicia Owen's allegation was that Chief Wadman had made her pregnant. Let me ask you this. You were talking about him paying Wadman, Chief Wadman of the Omaha Police Department, who, by the way, is gone, long gone from there, as I understand
he's out teaching law in Utah. There was one instance where Colonel Michael Aquino came to a motel room, and he got from Larry King a suitcase, and it was filled with bearer bonds and cash. There was millions of dollars in that thing. It was for the Iran-Contras.
What about Warren Buffett?
Warren was in more than he would like to be known.
Yeah. Because I know DeCamp, his name shows up in DeCamp's book.
Yeah.
And of course everybody knows who Warren Buffett is.
Yep.
But he was involved in this level of this kind of stuff that was going on?
Oh, yeah. This is where I got approached on various occasions to do these things, and I wanted no part of it. And one person of which was the late Hunter Thompson.
Really?
You ever hike up into the mountains? Oh yeah, I do that I like to kill. And when you say kill, you're talking about what, neighbors? What?
We don't want to talk about shooting people, do we?
No, but you're teasing when you say you like to kill, right?
So Hunter Thompson approached you about doing a snuff film?
Yep.
Okay.
He was introduced to me by Larry King, and he offered me $100,000 to shoot a snuff film. Or actually, Larry offered it to me, but it was through him.
Yeah.
Larry really pressured me to do it, and I wouldn't do it. If something goes down, nobody will ever believe you if anything's ever said to them about what's going on.
Meaning the people that were there and their position in government and society.
There was one night where there was a presidential limousine, and the Secret Service had swept the place beforehand.
Yep.
And they kept it secured for a couple days. And, you know, that's what went on.
Well, do you think the things that were involved in the Franklin scandal were to compromise people and so that they would have political advantage over them?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there was blackmail and all that done. It was they basically had a honeypot scheme set up, you know, where they would get political people or people in power or that have money or whatever to engage with sex with men or underage kids or whatever, and then either they would be videotaping it secretly or somehow recording it.
There was a house in Washington, D.C. where a lot of the children were flown to, and there would be like pedophilic parties, pedophilic orgies. And this house was wired for audiovisual blackmail by a CIA asset named Craig Spence.
This individual here is Craig Spence, who was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., but who purportedly had connections to the CIA and was tied up in this homosexual prostitution inquiry that famously made the cover of the Washington Times in 1989. Spence's Washington, D.C. home had been wired for video and audio surveillance, according to him, by people connected with the CIA.
Spence was a Republican lobbyist and was also part of the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union. Later on, he openly expressed his fear he would be killed by the CIA and his death made to look like a suicide. True enough, Spence was found dead inside his hotel room, and the coroner declared his death a suicide.
I had been in the business for a year or so when I answered the casket hotline. The caller said his name was Craig Spence, and I found him to be quite garrulous. Typically, the initial phone call placed to me by clients was brief, and they often provided a pseudonym, but Spence disclosed that he was a lobbyist who lived in D.C.'s upscale Kalorama neighborhood. He requested a young, boyish escort, 18 or 19 years old. I phoned to Jimmy, and he sent an escort to Spence's home. 2 hours later, Spence phoned again, requesting a second escort, which Jimmy quickly dispatched to his residence. At the time, I found my conversations with Spence extremely perplexing, and I will forever ruefully regret the day that he contacted me. Spence started phoning me almost every day, and he spent up to $20,000 a month on escorts, becoming my most prolific and lucrative client. The vast sums he spent on escorts translated into well over 100 sessions a month. I was puzzled by his exorbitant expenditures, so I questioned the various escorts who had been dispatched to his residence about their respective encounters with Spence. Some described bacchanalian orgies. Other escorts who had one-on-one encounters with Spence described his penchant for extreme depravity. He was fond of being shackled, fettered, and whipped, and he also had a predilection for being beaten up and urinated on. Spence was certainly an enigma to me, because I sincerely wondered how he became so deranged. The revelations unfurled by the escorts who called on him prompted me to send only extremely seasoned escorts to his house. I had been interacting with Spence over the phone for a couple of months when he invited me to his Kalorama home. Given the anecdotes that were conveyed to me by the escorts who had dealt with Spence face to face, I felt apprehensive when I drove to his home. I was met at the door by one of his security personnel who escorted me into the living room, which was beautifully furnished and decorated. Spence and an African-American man in his 40s were reclined on the living room's chocolate-colored sofa, and I was directed to a leather chair that was adjacent to the sofa. And after I sat down, he introduced me to Larry King, his African-American friend. Spence certainly didn't come across as the reprobate described by the escorts, but rather he appeared to be a refined gentleman. After Spence's perfunctory introduction, he launched into a long-winded soliloquy. His initial remarks were of a resume of sorts. He said that he was a lobbyist as well as a consultant for various interests in Japan and the healthcare industry. Spence then told me that he had, quote, friends who were perched at the pinnacle of power. He emphatically stated that he held the reins to omnipotence, and he had the ability to make a life-altering phone call. He repeatedly reiterated that he could make, quote, life-altering phone calls. After Spence concluded expounding on his power and connections, he discussed my role in his grand vision. He made it crystal clear that my escorts were interacting with the most powerful men in the country, so the caliber of escort was imperative to him. He required the highest quality escorts who were punctual and impeccably dressed. He required escorts who were articulate and appeared to be college graduates. He required that I diligently screen and qualify escorts to meet his lofty standards. Spence barked out his demands as if he were barking out orders in Marine boot camp. And he emphasized that it was a privilege for me to provide him with escorts. King also chimed in about his exalted status and clout too. I felt like Spence was putting on a show for King, but King wasn't an individual who acquiesced to being outboasted. They pumped themselves up. King then made a number of disclosures that I found to be absolutely bizarre. He revealed that he and Spence operated an interstate pedophile network that flew children from coast to coast. King also discussed that he and Spence had a clientele of powerful pedophiles who actually took pleasure in murdering children. In fact, King seemed to be obsessed with the subject of murdering children. I sincerely thought that I was talking to a pair of psychotics on the run from a psychiatric hospital. After Spence and King conversed about their rarefied statuses and their extreme pedophilic perversities, Spence shifted gears and started to sincerely inquire about my life. He asked where I was born and where I attended college. He then questioned me about the particular particulars of my escort service. In the context of our earlier discussion, Spence's questions seemed like non sequiturs to me. Though I answered Spence's questions truthfully, I was uncertain about the motivation for his inquiries because Spence struck me as an individual who generally had a self-centered, utilitarian reason for every action. As Spence inquired about my life, King sipped on his drink and was ominously silent, but an unnerving smile was etched across his face. When Spence finished quizzing me about my life, he stood up and gestured for me to accompany him. I stood up and followed him. King remained seated on the sofa. Spence walked toward a large mirror that was situated on the living room wall and opened a closet door that was in the corner of his living room. He popped open a secret panel that was embedded in the closet and stepped into a small room that was behind the mirror. I cautiously paused at the threshold of the closet, but Spence waved his right hand, signifying that I should follow him into the surreptitious room. The mirror on the living room wall was, in fact, a two-way mirror, and the room had a video camera on a tripod that was pointed toward the living room and also a wall of video monitors. Spence leaned over one of the video monitors and, after tapping a few of its buttons, he replayed the concluding minutes of our conversation. At that moment, I felt shrink-wrapped by cellophane, and I found it difficult to breathe. As I silently stared at the monitor, Spence casually smiled and explained to me that his entire home was bugged for clandestine surveillance. End quote. CIA operatives had installed the concealed video cameras throughout his house. He couldn't help himself from crowing that his surveillance equipment was state-of-the-art, and the camera that captured our conversations was embedded in the living room's thermostat. Spence then divulged that he blackmailed the rich and powerful. I remained stunned and speechless as I watched myself discussing my life and escort service on the video monitor, but after a few minutes I started to swell with anger. However, I didn't express my anger to Spence because at that moment I was undeniably frightened of him, and I'm also not a confrontational person. Once Spence had flaunted his blackmail equipment, he dispensed a grave threat about the, quote, consequences if I uttered nary a word relating to his concealed cameras. He then dismissed me. As we sat in Spence's living room, Spence and King once more broached the subject of me procuring children for them, but they started becoming extremely aggressive. Although I emphatically told them that I wouldn't pander children, their demands escalated to an inexorable crescendo. Spence and King finally demanded that I pluck destitute children off the streets of D.C. and deliver the children to them. I was essentially blackmailed during my first meeting with Spence and King, and I found my subsequent meetings with the tandem quite unpleasant, because they attempted to coerce me into ensnaring children for them. King had previously mentioned that he flew children into D.C., and the escorts I employed confirmed that minors were in attendance at Spence's orgies. Despite my earlier state of denial, I had come to the horrifying conclusion that Spence and King operated an interstate pedophile network for their power broker cronies. But I absolutely refused to aid and abet their abuse of children, despite Spence's potential to blackmail me or perhaps even kill me.
How old were these boys and girls? They could be anywhere from probably 8, 10, 12 years old, all the way to usually their early 20s.
And where'd they come from?
Some of them came from Omaha, some of them came from New York, or he had them out in Washington, D.C. You know, a lot of them, they were street kids, and he had a way of finding people who would not be missed. He'd find somebody out on the street, and he'd bring them in and feed them, clothe them, give them a real nice, glamorous life. And next thing you know, it's payback time. They would get these kids from the street. He'd offer them a life, and they didn't realize that he was going to take it.
Well, how much was drugs involved in all this?
Very much.
From what standpoint?
Drugs was a strong part of how they got control of some of the kids, because that's what some of the kids were there to get. They would do the sexual acts and then be provided with cocaine or whatever type of drug they wanted.
There was a party that I was at in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row where he had the table laid out like you would a fine buffet. Well, they had little salt dishes with razor blades and spoons and with, you know, the little straw on them.
Yeah.
And a bowl full of cocaine in a punch bowl.
And again, these are people, politicians and people like that who are attending these parties and partaking in this.
Some of these things were cloaked in secrecy because a lot of them were instigated out of the back. That's the Air Force Base in Omaha. That's Strategic Air Command.
What did they have to do with it?
That's where a lot of the MK Ultra things went on. The mind control. A lot of the kids were brought in. They were either drugged or they'd take them through this MK Ultra and do the mind control. Larry was very good at that.
And what about these snuff films? Did he do those indoors or outdoors?
They were usually done in, out of the way, you know, they were places that, like an old farmhouse or something like that, where they would sacrifice somebody.
Well, who would they sacrifice?
Basically, they could take one of the kids.
With kids that have been kidnapped or otherwise?
I guess. You know, as far as I could tell, that's where they come from. He had a daycare center in Omaha that he ran as a non-profit.
What was Larry doing at the daycare center?
Oh, he was finding kids.
Okay.
And he would go rent them out, whether it be for himself or for others.
How did they get that past the parents, for example?
You know, a lot of them were orphans, street kids. He'd say, well, my son's having a party, a sleepover, or something like that. And the way Larry put it was, this is so bizarre that nobody will ever believe you if you told them. Even to this day, people think that I'm full of it by relating to them some of the things that have went on. To the point to where I realized what was going on, I knew that if I was just to go to somebody and say that, you know, this is what's happening, they would basically squash me.
King was arrested, and a federal investigation showed he'd stolen $14 million from Franklin. But the FBI's inquiries were secret, and evidence of King's sex ring was quickly covered up.
They didn't ask me very much about Larry King. They treated the allegations that I made about the people who abused me almost like a joke.
A list of 271 victims of King's abuse was compiled, all recalling the same story, being taken to parties by King and abused by prominent figures.
And the information presented to the Foster Care Review Board, either via the telephone reports, the personal reports, or the reports we reviewed, Larry King's name was consistently present as someone that the youth were making allegations against. I mean, I turned that information over to authorities, and nothing happened. I would say we handed over at least a foot-high amount of material. Generally speaking, the allegations were ignored.
The New York Times revealed that both federal and state investigators were given thousands of files from abused children and their testimonies, but instead of bringing those victims justice, Douglas County and federal grand juries ordered the files to be sealed, neglected to interview witnesses, and even filed charges of perjury.
And what happened when all of this came to light? The FBI stepped in and cross-examined every one of the children and told them if they did not recant their testimony, they would be liable to as much as 530 years in prison for perjury. They were grilled for hour on hour. The ones who didn't recant ended up either dead or in jail.
The media immediately started discrediting the witnesses.
The paper never looked for information that would support any of the allegations. The whole purpose of the stories was to destroy any credibility that these youth may have.
I was very disappointed with the way the FBI and law enforcement treated the victims. They, in fact, turned them into the offenders, so to speak.
This is unprecedented, probably in the history of the United States, commented Dr. Judy Ann Denser-Gerber, a lawyer, psychiatrist, and nationally prominent specialist on child abuse, during her visit to Nebraska in December 1990. If the children are not telling the truth, particularly if they have been abused, they need help, medical attention. You don't throw them in jail.
It's not going to be believed, they said. It will not be believed. You will be found guilty of perjury. I mean, they weren't telling me maybe. You know, they were saying, there's no way. You go on with this story, you're going to jail. I mean, that was said to me direct.
And instead of taking the evidence that was delivered to them by the victims and interrogating the persons who the victims identified, they seemed to bear down and try to get the victims to change their story.
The FBI's attitude was, just no, these kind of things don't happen. From the first interview when I went, and realized they don't believe a fucking thing I'm saying, they were just appalled, but I realized what that look in their eye was back then. It was fear. It was fear of every, I had witnessed, firsthand things that would, destroy this city, people, a position, you know what I mean?
Pedophilia owns this nation. Pedophilia is part of what we're talking about. And the hiding of the pedophiles is being done by none other than the FBI.
You literally have to have bricks for brains to take on the FBI in this country. And that's exactly what you have to do this properly. They now, in my opinion, in my investigation, are the architects of the cover-up.
The FBI has been informed as to everything that has come out of Benassi's mouth, and that was done by his attorney, John DeCamp.
I submitted it to them, and it was like a forbidden zone I'd entered where they won't even communicate on it or talk to you or even reply.
Under pressure from the FBI, Troy Bonner agreed to tell a Douglas County grand jury investigating Larry King that he and Alicia Owen had concocted the entire child abuse story on payment of a $500 bond. Troy Bonner was to be the star witness against Alicia Owen, but he grew uneasy about maintaining what he claims were the lies fed to him by the FBI. But when his brother Sean died in an inexplicable gun accident, Troy and his family were convinced they'd been sent a warning message.
And those of us that didn't like to be involved and didn't want to be involved or threatened.
For some reason, they had to send a signal to every kid who was a potential witness. A signal so loud and clear, if you dare to come forward, if you dare to talk, watch what happens.
And when they threatened, that I can go find somebody that will kill you, and it will kill your family, you don't tell anybody.
Both grand juries admitted that Alicia Owen and Paul Bonacci, whose testimony extensively corroborated Owen's, had been badly abused. But this was done, they concluded, by persons other than those the young people named. Bonacci, too, was indicted for perjury. Two other victim witnesses, whose stories buttressed those of Owen and Bonacci, recanted under immense pressure. Alicia Owen and Paul Bonacci refused to recant.
Every victim witness who stepped forward in any way, or even was a potential witness that somebody heard about, has either been killed, put in jail under some theory or other, terrified or run out of the state, discredited.
Is there a way for a well-prepared person to come out attaining justice if they've been falsely accused?
Rarely.
Because just the stack is just so...
a lot of money. It takes a lot of people behind you. And, if you're just one person, you have to rely on public defender. You might as well kiss it goodbye.
Obviously, the FBI was protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of old pedophiles having improper relations with little boys. They were protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of drug peddlers.
The FBI was brought in because I think one of the few law enforcement entities that had enough power, enough resources, and the wherewithal to be able to do such a massive cover-up.
If you told somebody, you may be telling the wrong person.
Yeah.
And it would leak up, whatever, and you may find yourself dead. You may find family members dead.
They were protecting some very prominent politicians, some very powerful and wealthy individuals associated with those politicians and the political system, up to and including the highest political people in this entire country.
The Omaha World Herald was run by Harold Anderson.
Okay.
He had a farm place outside of Omaha, and they would go out and have various things out at that farm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You're talking about ritualistic kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of the kids were brought out there, the ones that were kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
That farmhouse played an important role.
This is an incredible story, Rusty. How much did Satanism play into the picture there? Was that a big part of it? What was it all about?
A lot of that centered around Michael Aquino.
Michael Aquino was a high-level officer in the National Security Agency. He was and is, you'll see him today, a practicing Satanist. He created the Satanic Temple of Set, which he still runs. He was a high-level NSA officer. He's a member of the association I used to be in, the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, AFIO. He's a member of that. He's plugged in big time to the intelligence community, and he wrote a paper called Mind War, and Mind War was about psychological operations against populations, including the domestic population.
Drug testing on American citizens was more widespread than previously believed.
They included experiments secretly involving hospitals testing drugs on terminal cancer patients and enlisting prisons to experiment on criminal sexual psychopaths.
The committee was never able to determine the full scope of the program, since one-time CIA Director Richard Helms acknowledged that the program's records were destroyed in 1973 to avoid embarrassment.
Dr. Aquino, the high priest of the Church of Set, Temple of Set, also a colonel, interestingly enough, in the United States Army.
Aquino was first involved in MK-Ultra operations during the Vietnam War as part of the Phoenix program.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
Here's where it appears to have come from. In World War II, before it even ended, Alan Dulles and people from our intelligence community were already through Switzerland making contacts to get out Nazi scientists. As World War II ends, they not only get out rocket scientists, but they also get out some Nazi doctors who have been doing mind control research in the death camps. They brought them to the United States. Along with them was a young boy, a teenager, who had been raised in a Hasidic Jewish tradition and a background of Kabbalistic mysticism that probably appealed to people in the cult, because at least by the turn of the century, Aleister Crowley had been introducing Kabbalism into satanic stuff, if not earlier. And they started doing mind control research for military intelligence in military hospitals in the United States. And the people that came, the Nazi doctors, were Satanists. Subsequently, the boy changed his name, Americanized it some, obtained an MD degree, became a physician, and continued this work and appears to be at the center of the cult programming today. His name is known to patients throughout the country. What they basically do is they will get a child, and they'll start this in basic forms, it appears, by about 2.5, after the child's already been made dissociated. Basically, in the programming, the child will be put typically on a gurney. They will have an IV in one hand or arm. They'll be strapped down, typically naked. They will have wires attached to their heads to monitor electroencephalograph patterns. And they will see a pulsing light, most often described as red, occasionally white or blue. They'll be given most commonly, I believe, Demerol. Sometimes it'll be other drugs as well, depending on the kind of programming. They have it, I think, down to a science where they've learned you give so much every 25 minutes until the programming is done. They then, as they have that, will describe a pain in one ear, their right ear generally, where it appears a needle has been placed. And they will hear weird disorienting sounds in that ear, while they see photic stimulation, external psychic driving to drive the brain into a brainwave pattern with a pulsing light at a certain frequency. Then, after a suitable period when they're in a certain brainwave state, they will begin programming. Let me give you an example of one kind of programming in a patient at this point in time, about 8 years old, who has gone through a great deal. She would go into a room, get all hooked up, they would do all of these sorts of things. And when she was into the proper altered state now, they were no longer having to monitor it with electroencephalographs. She also had already had placed on her electrodes, one in the vagina, for example, 4 on the head. Sometimes they'll be on other parts of the body. And they would then begin. And they would say to her, "You are angry with someone in the group." She said, "No, I'm not." And they violently shocked her. And they would say the same thing until she complied and didn't make any negative response. They repeated again, "Do you understand?" "Well, yes, but I don't want to." Shock her again until they get compliance. And maybe she'd say yes, but they might say, "We don't believe you," and shock her anyway. Go back and go over it again. And they would continue in this sort of fashion. Come back. They may review what they've done and stop, or they might review what they've done and go on to new material. She said the sessions might go a half an hour, they might go 3 hours. She estimated 3 times a week. This is basically how a lot of programming goes on.
No, first, I've been involved in intelligence and psychological operations for about 40 years in all levels of it and across the intelligence community.
You are a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army.
Correct.
Now, and how does the Army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
The Army has known about my religion for the entire span of my Army career, which began in 1968. The Army has paid very little attention to it, the same as it would to anybody who is, say, a follower of Hinduism or of Buddhism or any other slightly unusual religion today.
He was occupied a position at the Presidio, which was a training facility for the U.S. government, and it was uncovered that he was running a pedophile ring. I think 50 kids came out and fingered him as the guy that had done sexual acts on them as children. It went to trial. He walked from the trial.
Here, charges surface connecting ritual child abuse at the Presidio Daycare Center to the devil cult. It was here, parents and others allege, that as many as 60 young children were ritualistically abused by soldiers of Satan. What actually was done to the kids?
Oral copulation, sodomy, defecation, they were urinated on.
Some of that ritualistic abuse is alleged to have taken place at the Aquino's home at 2430 Leavenworth Street near the Presidio base. What's more, since that original disclosure, at least 5 other children have made identical allegations.
The entire time that the so-called child molestation scandal was occurring at the Presidio, the time period when these terrible events were supposedly taking place, I was assigned to the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., and my wife was out there living with me.
Army investigators here at the Presidio base in San Francisco have now formally accused him of ritually abusing young children from the base's daycare center. Indeed, one young girl says she was horribly abused by both Michael and Lilith Aquino at their nearby home.
A U.S. Army chaplain made an accusation of child molestation centering on us at the Presidio of San Francisco at a time when my wife and I were living 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C.
But we have a copy of the police report, and the child appears to have identified you.
That's not true.
But is it not a fact that a 3.5-year-old girl identified you as the alleged perpetrator of molestation? No, as a matter of fact, it is not the case. An accusation was made by her stepfather, who is an Army chaplain, speaking on behalf of this child. In her original interview with the FBI, she denied ever being molested. Well, I've seen you are innocent until proven guilty. You were never charged in this case. I don't want to belabor the point. I have seen, however, the affidavits for the search warrant of your home, and they indicate the child is speaking to the authorities, not her father. This was after she had been subjected to therapy.
But as the police report shows, and the Aquinos know full well, the victim of that attack did identify them both as her abusers, to her parents, to her therapist, and to the Army.
All I can say is that we have discussed this regularly with the CID, and we have not been told of a single other child that has made such a supposed identification at all.
Well, we've been told a couple of days ago that 5 more children have since disclosed.
By who?
By this mother, that's who,
Her children were amongst the 5.
They were taken to a daycare center where Michael Aquino and several other adults molested them. They did rituals. They wore robes. There was chanting. There were candles. He sodomized my children. He made them do all kinds of things, I guess. And they've also told the Army investigators that they'd been in his house, and they disclosed what the inside of his house looked like.
Oh, it's stupid.
It's absolutely untrue.
Just ridiculous. It's that kind of stuff. It's that kind of stuff that is causing all the misery.
It's a witch hunt in the classical sense, just as the witch hunts that took place here in England and Salem, Massachusetts in the United States.
Throughout the ages, many transgressive and hideous crimes were said to be the work of devil worshippers. Almost all of these allegations have since been disproved, but seemingly overnight, America was gripped, and the public needed no more convincing. Satanism was real and thriving in their communities. The Satanic Panic of the 1980s had started, and lasted for over 10 years, a period that sociologist Stanley Cohen labelled as one of the purest cases of moral panic in recent times. This episode serves as evidence that humanity's age-old obsession with demons and witchcraft is not confined to long-ago ages or faraway lands. America's tabloid fixation with contemporary devil worship was an embarrassing reminder of how susceptible a credulous public can be to sensational media scares, even in the modern era.
Let's go in and talk about Satanism.
To most, it conjures images of medieval black masses or sinister deeds done for the devil.
What is it, this Satanism? I think that there is some confusion tonight because this same term means something different to Satanists than it does to Christians in the United States. By our own standards, the people who you've shown in these film clips would not be Satanists, either present or in the past. Rather, they would be the failures of a conventional religion.
I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and perverting them to the worship of evil.
Right.
Many officials have been reluctant to admit the horrendous ramifications of satanic activity in America and Europe. Ultimately, the purpose of Satanism is to commit atrocities against the Judeo-Christian God, his laws, and his most precious creation, mankind.
Christians are the Satanist worst enemy. They are out to torment you. They are out to blackmail you. They will even kill you. They even try to kill me.
In every organized crime syndicate, whether they be Russian, Italian, Jewish, Latin American, you've got to kill an innocent to really get into the inner sanctum. Go kill that old lady. Go rob an old man in a truck and shoot him in the head. We want to see it on the news. Go kill a kid in the playground.
Satanism, we are finding, is becoming international and interconnected. They are interconnected in Britain from one city to another and into Europe and into America. A lot of money is involved, a lot of finance, and this finance is made through pornographic videos, through drugs, and through arms.
Whether you believe in a literal devil is not important in understanding Satanism's effect on our society.
Don't take your own Judeo-Christian backgrounds and use it. It's not what you believe. That's not important. Remember what they believe.
Lucifer's kingdom is the direct inversion of Yahweh's kingdom. These blood sacrifices are a blasphemy to Christ's atonement.
From our point of view, it really makes no difference whether you pray to a father god or to a mother goddess or to an entire gaggle of gods and goddesses.
One of the more powerful rituals in Satanism is the Black Mass, a parody of the Catholic Mass in which the text is said backwards and in which many other sacred Christian traditions are mocked.
In Satanism, you have rituals that are designed, first of all, to deliberately mock God. So in our particular type of Satanism, we would mock, like, say, the Catholic Mass. We would consecrate communion hosts, and then we would do things like stamp on them or urinate on them or other things, believing that by doing that, we were somehow abusing God.
Even in many branches of La Cosa Nostra, they burn images of Jesus and Mary and say a little devilish prayer. It's like showing that you'll really get into something wicked. It's like, okay, be part of this or we don't trust you. So it's basically rolling around in the cess is how you become part of the club.
Were you raised with a sense of right and wrong, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I had both. I mean, to the outside world, everything we did was proper and right. And then there were the nights that things changed, that things just got turned around. What was wrong was right, and what was right was wrong.
In satanic occultism, that which is good is bad, and that which is bad is good. Pay attention and notice the reverse of everything that is normal becoming abnormal.
Satanism, as it stands, is basically a reversion and perversion of Christian symbolism.
All religions are coming around to Satanism. We're in the very throes of a new satanic age. The evidence is all around us. All we have to do is look at it.
Shemhan Bagash,
Champion for us.
Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
In 1966, Anton LaVey founded the first Church of Satan in San Francisco, which, at one point, claimed 10,000 members. LaVey authored the Satanic Bible and Satanic Rituals, two of Satanism's most important books.
Originally, the Church of Satan, when it was founded, was composed not of people with a hatred for Christianity, but of people who, by and large, were agnostics and atheists, because they felt that the institutions which had arisen around Christianity had failed in their moral commitment. So Satanism itself became an emphasis on rational self-interest and on taking responsibility for your own intellectual and ethical decisions. Rational self-interest, you felt? Yes.
A person has to be good to themselves before they can be good to other people. So we feel the greatest sin of all is self-deceit. This is a very selfish religion. We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man.
And therefore, Satanists take that to its extreme and say, if I want to be violent, I can be violent. If I want to hurt others to gain my way, then I can hurt others to gain my way.
The origins of satanic ritual abuse go back to ancient Babylon. The scripture says that the Babylonian mysteries will form the backbone of apostate religion during the last days.
Any religion that elevates the teachings of Lucifer above Yahweh gods and ultimately take their teachings or build their beliefs on the teaching of Lucifer is part of Mystery Babylon.
According to my Bible, witchcraft is witchcraft. God does not distinguish between black or white or grey. Witchcraft allows you or teaches you to depend on supernatural powers and spirits to get things that you want on this earth.
Are the Satanists involved in the New Age movement? Is the New Age movement really sort of a cover for this whole Luciferian conspiracy, in your opinion?
I wouldn't say it's a cover. I would say it's the integral part of it, you know, the spiritual heart of what you're talking about, you know, a new world order. In fact, Alice Bailey, who coined the term New Age, who was a psychic and a channeler and an occultist, coined the term New Age and also coined the term New World Order. They both came from the same source. In her book, Externalization of the Hierarchy, she said that the New World Order would be based on the ancient wisdom or ancient occultism, which is where the term New Age came from.
Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky wrote a magazine. I've had the bound works of that magazine entitled Lucifer Magazine.
Witchcraft to the majority of people on the outside tends to smack of Satanism, which it is not. The actual religion of witchcraft is based on the universal religion of paganism, which is at the root of all civilizations. It's a prehistoric religion, and that gives us the sustenance to continue by linking in with the planetary and seasonal cycles and becoming at one with the planet. So most people involved in witchcraft tend to be ecologically minded. They tend to love animals and also be gregarious and willing to help and serve others. And that's as far removed from the image of Satanism as you could get. But bound up in the religion of witchcraft, there is also the practice of magic. And magic is a power. It's an abstract power. It's the power of genius and creativity which courses through the universe. It's nothing at all secular. It can be applied by anyone. And magic is the method or the technique whereby you apply that formula. The power is a natural power. It's one that anybody can use. It actually holds you up. Magic is the intensive creative power which gives you thought, gives you reason to be. It's not secular at all. So therefore, the application of it is a question of technique rather than belief. Once you understand that magic does work, you can use it for all facets. There's been a lot of talk about black and white magic, and it's important to distinguish between the two. There isn't a generic kind of magic which is black. There is magic, pure and simple, but the use of it depends on the good taste of the operator. Now, unfortunately, there are people in creation, there must be room for them, for all potentialities, it's unfortunate, but they do exist, who are more inclined towards the sinister aspects of magic, towards the darker aspects, primarily because it gives them either a vicarious thrill or an excuse for their own sexual abnormalities. So there's nothing wrong with that, providing they do not harm another. We're not evangelical in the sense that we try to push it on other people, but we are here as an access point so that people can reach out to us. We never refuse any inquiries at all.
3 years on, Bray did refuse to be interviewed and threatened legal action when asked to explain his part in the current promotion of Satanism.
We're being filmed from the inside, gentlemen. If you look through there, there's a Sanyo video camera being aimed at us.
We wanted to question Bray about his publication, The Lamp of Thoth, which has carried want ads for dead bodies, articles advocating sacrificial murder, and is the platform for Michael Aquino's new British recruiting drive.
Mr. Bray, we'd like to talk to you about the business you conduct and about the kinds of activities you promote.
I'd like to talk to you about articles promoting murder, witchcraft, advertisements calling for dead bodies. There are many people who get into this disgusting business who wouldn't do so without you, Mr. Bray. What a pathetic display.
Bray makes light of the dangers of Satanism, but some would say it is dangerous in any circumstances. One ex-Satanist now lectures nationally on what she calls the doorway to danger.
Maybe because you're curious. There may be some of you wondering what doorway to danger is all about.
Audrey Harper says she was once a prisoner of fear, a recruiting agent for a coven which practiced child abuse and human sacrifice.
I think it's a far bigger problem. I think we're only touching the tip of it. When you realise that all these places are self-governing, they can do what they like. They attract homosexuals, they attract lesbians, they attract paedophiles because they can get away with it. Because the covens are so secret, even the satanic temples are secret. They can shift around. If they think they've been rumbled, they just go to another building. So it is a big problem.
But are we talking about just a few people in isolated parts of the country?
No, we're not. We're talking, it is nationwide.
There is something going on here on an international, worldwide scale right before our eyes, but that so many of us are unaware, and consequently we're not really seeing what is happening. There is, in fact, a conspiracy or a planned world domination coming by this thing that George Bush calls a New World Order. On the back of the $1 bill, there are a lot of important occult symbolism on the back of the $1 bill. On the left-hand side, you'll see the pyramid, and the pyramid of Egypt. That's an Egyptian pyramid on an American dollar bill. The significance is very important. Above the pyramid, you will see the words Annuit Coeptus, which basically means in Latin, our enterprise is a success, or our project has been crowned with success. And the project, which is a success, is on the banner beneath the pyramid. Novus Ordo Seclorum, being Latin for New Order of the World, or the New World Order. On the bottom of the pyramid, you will see the Roman numerals for 1776. This exact identical emblem of the pyramid within the circle, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, it was not original in America. It was first found on writings that are today in museums in Europe in the year 1774, 1775 by a man named Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati, a secret society of Freemasons operating in Europe that had designs on the entire world and to bring about what they call a new world order. Well, I think in this election year, we've heard a lot about values, Geraldo. We've heard a lot that our little children should be saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Mr. Aquino has identified himself as an Antichrist. He preaches that as leader of the Temple Set. I don't think I'm misquoting him. I find it inconceivable that we can have candidates talking about one nation under God and having our children say that, yet by the same token, we can have somebody in our army as a colonel leading our troops in battle who are opposed to the very concept of God and whose whole purpose it is to fight against God.
Worshiping of Satan is not a crime in the United States of America. It's protected under the First Amendment. They're not committing any crime. There's nothing that the United States law enforcement can do.
It's not against the law to be a Satanist or to be a member of a witchcraft group, or to be a doorknob worshiper. I don't really care what your form of religion is. I don't investigate the religion. It's the crime I investigate.
There are people that are using the occult, are claiming to be Satanists, and that they are abusing children. We know it.
But there are deeper reasons that go beyond mere lust for power and the unlimited drugs and deviant sexual behavior that go with it.
I think a lot of people really wonder why these people act like this, why these people sacrifice children, why they are all pedophiles, why they worship a demon, basically. And I think that there's a lot of people that are not okay with just the answer of, well, they're just sick, or, well, they're just psychologically deranged.
I think it can be put in one four-letter word, lust. And I don't just mean sexual lust. There is a lust for power that is part of our sinful nature. There is a lust, of course, for sexuality. And there is a kind of, C.S. Lewis talks about it as a spiritual lust, as the kind of spiritual itch to want to somehow reach into the unknown. We're fascinated by it.
Okay, a lot of people have this funny notion that Satanism is Anton LaVey and the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino, and the Order of the Trapezoid and all that. That's the flesh, okay?
But what is the attraction of these cults, and how are people lured into them?
As far as the attraction, I mean, what actually would make somebody become a Satanist? Well, for some people, in my case at least, it was a gradual infiltration. It was a move from things like ESP and flying saucers, and then just a very gradual, many-year slide into finally regarding Satan as my God.
The Satanists have merely followed the pantheist way of thought to its logical conclusion. If there are no absolutes, if God doesn't exist, he hasn't set absolute limits to what we can do. So therefore, anything that the self decides it wants, the self can go after.
Satanism gives you a sense of power. It gives you a feeling that you have power over your own life. Of course, it's the ultimate delusion, because actually what you have done is you have totally surrendered control of your life to a demented, brilliant psychopath, Satan himself.
I think a lot of these kids who are brought up by these Satanists who sacrifice these children in religious rituals.
Do you believe that's true?
I don't know, I just made that up.
Is that true? Well, I can't definitively tell you that it is. What I can say is, I now believe that ritual abuse programming is widespread, is systematic, is very well organized, from highly esoteric information, which is published nowhere, has not been on any book or talk show, that we have found all around this country and in at least one foreign country.
I know when I was involved in the Church of Satan, they were very proud of the fact that there was not a single military installation in the world that did not have an outpost of avowed Satanists. Satanists are drawn to the military because of the idea of war and death. You see, they view war as one gigantic human sacrifice.
I mean, look at wars. Look at wars that are happening in the world today. Look at the tens of thousands of people that are being slaughtered in warfare today. That's also a kind of human sacrifice. I think we have to consider the possibility that some kind of demonic force is thriving on this and being nourished by it. And that's one of the things that we need to do as human beings, is to separate ourselves from that and say, no, we will not do that. We will not feed that energy.
Consequently, when you understand that there is a legitimate, de jure, and real magical system that's based on some very ancient Canaanite, Phoenician Canaanite blood ritual, all kinds of strange religious systems in operation, and that's how I believe the people who are in real power maintain their power, because they've made a pact with an occult force that operates on this earth.
The demonic practices of the ancient Canaanites did not cease when the children of Israel invaded the Promised Land. They have been passed down through the centuries within the mystery religions.
The mystery of iniquity, the secret power of lawlessness. This is the global system of the fallen ones, as they're entrenched into humans, and as they begin to embed this global, dream of regime change, bring down all the nations, bring a new global order. You can't do that without the troops. You cannot do that at all. You can't have a new world order without the most superior military troops in history.
The big picture, they want it all. They want to enslave your child, your wife, your mother. There isn't anything that you ever had. There isn't anything that you own. There isn't any right that you possess that they're not planning on taking away. They want it all. You've got a choice. You can join in this fight, or you can die.
External control of the mind is not something new. It's thousands of years old.
You may be surprised to know that satanic ritual abuse is really not a new problem.
It's recorded in caves. It's recorded the exact formula for trauma-based mind control in the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
And it hasn't gone away. It is not subsiding. It is not a fad over, just a period of time. It is the sequence of satanic evolution. And there is an agenda so vast, so wide, so broad, so strong, that God began to reveal and give insight to it 2,600 years ago.
Those of us that read the Bible and understand its literal interpretation about the sins of the father, understand what multi-generational abuse means. In this case, multi-generational abuse, and that begins, by the way, at birth, involves horrendous sexual and psychological and physical abuse that is put on these children by their caregivers.
We go all the way back to Ezekiel chapter 8. The underground Luciferic, the serpent worship, human sacrifice, is very similar. And I would say it is generational. So the sense of satanic generational development on the earth since the fall of the human race, even after the flood, we have this project of war against God, war against the people of God.
Now then there are generational Satanists. These are people who would have Satanism in their family, and it's passed down from generation to generation, just as the name would intimate, and these Satanists would reproduce all kinds of horrors secretly.
From infancy, they have learned all these things. They have been molested, forced to drink blood, eat feces, urinated upon, sodomized, and just from generation to generation, it continues.
You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were...
Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
On May the 1st, 1989, viewers of the Oprah Winfrey Show, a very famous television program, were in for quite a surprise. Oprah interviewed a young Jewish girl named Rachel, who testified on the program that her family had for several generations engaged in the practice of ritual murder.
So when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
Yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm. And this is, does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl?
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right.
Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
There's other Jewish families across the country, not just my own family.
Really?
A year later, in 1990, Rachel again bravely stepped forward and admitted that this terrible deed had occurred, as noted in the March 1990 issue of Cult Watch Response. Recently, I had enough courage to share some of my story. I revealed that I am a Jewish survivor of a multi-generational family who practiced human sacrifice and cannibalism.
But I'm very surprised because the Jewish faith is the Jewish faith, and worshiping the devil is not a part of the Jewish faith. But Jewish people do not worship the devil.
I hope the Jews did kill Christ. I'd do it again.
There was a book that I had just come across called Lilith's Cave, which is a book of Jewish mysticism and supernatural. And there's a lot in that book that relates to what I, endured when I was a child.
I want to stop right here, though, because you know how people build prejudices. I want to make it very clear. This is one Jewish person. So don't go around now saying to people, those Jewish people, they're worshiping them. This is just one person.
It's time to wake the town and tell the sheeple. We're being led like sheep to the slaughter. I don't know if you've ever seen sheep go to the slaughter, but they are generally led by a Jew.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Judas goat. The Judas goat will bring them all the way up the ramp, and right before they drop the trap on the sheep, the Judas goat steps to the side.
And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
All right, you ready? I said Jew. Who the hell is Jew? Jew ready.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies, but anyway.
And again, these are the religions that predate Christianity, that had to go underground under that. They don't call themselves devil worshippers. The devil is their god.
When you have Jesus and Logos as your thesis, the antithesis, or the antithesis, is of course Satan.
The teaching of the mystery religions has been preserved in the literature and practice of several secret societies.
While the word Lucifer and the goddess cults are demonized by later organized religions, the pagan rituals associated with them were kept alive and portrayed as veiled symbolism and practiced covertly by secret societies until today.
The practice of human sacrifice has been propagated to the present day through the mystery religion.
There have been many cultures all throughout the earth that have practiced child sacrifice and ritualistic murder.
Ritual human sacrifice has been happening for thousands of years. Ancient cultures like the Aztecs and Mayans believed that offering up their fellow man and women was a way to strengthen and appease the gods.
In every ancient society, when they started to degenerate, they would order women to take their firstborn sons. It's in every history book. It's in burial grounds all over the world, and to throw their babies into fiery pits or into pools of water.
Now, let's talk about another particular favorite subject, and that is sacrifice, and not just referring to animals per se, but the topic of human sacrifice as well when it comes to ancient religion. Do we have any evidence at all for human sacrifice within the borders or regions of what we consider ancient Israel to be? And if so, is that due to the Israelites or possibly due to florid borders of their neighbors?
The Old Testament records the practice of animal sacrifice from the times of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and perhaps even earlier. One of the purposes of recounting the new sacrifice of Isaac, which was interrupted by God, was to illustrate the sublime significance and need of animal sacrifice as supplanting the abomination of human sacrifices, often practiced by pagans in the surrounding areas.
Babylon was the ancient pagan empire prominent in biblical prophetic works as an enemy of God's people due to their occult practices, sexual depravity, ritual sacrifice, and other sin.
The Babylonian mystery religion was started by Nimrod and his wife Semiramis. According to Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian who lived during the time of Jesus, Nimrod was the builder of the Tower of Babel and was the first man that Satan tried to use to set up a new world order.
It is important that you know that Nimrod incorporated into his worship system the grisly practice of human sacrifice and cannibalism.
The near sacrifice of Isaac would also be an illustration of the Christian doctrine of Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, sacrificed to atone for the sins of man, the Lamb of God.
And this is in the Bible. As I said, that there are many things in the scriptures that are hidden right in front of you. And if you don't know what they mean, you'd be surprised when you begin to look at where these stories come from.
But as the Bible tells us, there is nothing new under the sun. The same satanic evils which engaged in this practice today were led by the same spirit of the ancient world.
Luciferians worship various ancient pagan gods, including Lucifer, Moloch, Baal, Dagon, Imhotep, Horus, Isis, Anubis, and Set.
One and the same.
In Egypt, he is Ammon. In India, he is Shiva. In ancient Greece, he is Zeus, king of the gods. In all cases, he is the supreme deity.
These cultures were not in communication with each other, but they were, in every case, right before their fall, killing babies for demon gods.
The interesting thing about all of these various cultures is we find commonalities everywhere, and there seems to have been a lot of cultural diffusion. For an example, Egypt, South America, the Middle East, China, Portugal, all seem to have pyramids, as well as the practice of child sacrifice that go along with the pyramids.
Every culture, Asians, Africans, Mesoamericans, every culture starts taking hallucinogens and then starts worshiping entities that demand blood.
The Canaanites are going to be worshiping an abomination known as Moloch.
Now, some of you may be like, who is Moloch? Some of you guys that read your Bible a lot, especially in the Old Testament, you may already know who Moloch is, but...
The name Moloch derives from the Hebrew letters MLK, which generally means king. The MLK is vocalized as Molech, or Moloch, in the Masoretic texts, which is an authoritative text in Rabbinic Judaism. It's from this pronunciation that we get the contemporary name Moloch.
He is Lord Moloch.
Moloch is an idol and a large anthropomorphic god built of bronze, part human, part jackal.
If I stop feeding him, your world ends.
And it's going to be an idol in which children were sacrificed to.
This deity is mostly depicted as a golden, bronze, and sometimes silver bull, which is internally heated by fire, sometimes decorated in Judaic symbols and Hebrew characters.
The earliest descriptions of the idol of Moloch involve a blazing fire that would heat the demon, the idol of the demon, to such a temperature that placing a child into the hands of Moloch would burn the child alive, right? It would immolate it.
Remember, he sits astride this whole world, and you, and all your family. And he needs feeding more, ever more and 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 more.
Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, Whoever of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones.
In the Old Testament, there were a few times when the Jews strayed from their covenant with God and instead started worshipping false gods, like Moloch. These Jews engaged in ritualistic black magic and human sacrifices, especially with children.
These children were sacrificed to these gods. The age profile is very tight, between 1 and 1.5 months old. These urns, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them discovered with charred remains of infants.
Children, both male and female, mostly a few weeks old, were sacrificed by the Carthaginians. They even built a shrine south of Jerusalem where the human sacrifices were burnt in a pit, often called a Tophet. It's believed that the practice was done at night time, where drums were beaten to conceal the crying of child victims.
Steiger concludes the classical and biblical texts, as well as the archaeology, all indicate that healthy living children were sacrificed to the gods in the Tophet.
Tophet is Moloch, which was made of brass, and they heated him from his lower parts, and his hands being stretched out and made hot, they put the child between his hands, and he was burnt. When it vehemently cried out, the priests beat the drum, that the father might not hear the voice of his son, and his heart might not be moved. How did the Moloch work in the valley of Ben Hinnom? It was built outside of Jerusalem. It was an idol with a face of a calf and open hands, like someone who wants to take something from another. They would light this idol on fire until his hands were scorching. There were 7 chambers before him, and according to the quality of the sacrifice, that is how close one could come to him. If one came with a bird, then chamber 1, goat, chamber 2, sheep, chamber 3, calf, chamber 4, cow, chamber 5, and ox, chamber 6. He who brought his child, the priest would say that his offering is the greatest sacrifice. He would enter the innermost chamber and go and kiss the Moloch. The priest would then take the child and place it near the Moloch. They would then bang with the drums to drown out the cries.
And if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man when he gives some of his descendants to Molech, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut him off from his people and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit harlotry with Molech. Notice here that God speaks not only against those who would sacrifice children to the demon, but also all those who know that the sacrifice is happening and don't try to stop it.
Eventually Israel and Canaan are going to go to war, right? And the Bible, this is simply going to read as God smote the Canaanites. Moloch is not going to die, though. He's going to, after this ancient war between good and evil, Moloch is going to be resurrected, right? In the next incarnation in the area of Canaan, you're going to have Phoenicia, right? And the Phoenicians are going to have a god that is more or less Moloch, except they're going to call it Baal. Baal meaning Lord.
The Baal-based religion revolved around the cycles of nature necessary for survival and prosperity in the ancient world. Primarily growing crops or raising livestock, as well as the growth of human population.
Baal is the false Jesus or counterfeit Jesus. He is the one behind sexual perversion, all kinds of stuff.
Like what's going on right now in the internet, pornography is just off the charts.
Baal is also going to be an enormous bronze idol, but this time it is a humanoid bull. It's going to have hooves for feet, it's going to have horns coming out of its head, right? The Carthaginians would sacrifice to Baal by placing the child or the infant within a tomb in the monster's belly, right? There'd be a hollow opening, cavity within the creature's belly, and that would be set aflame. There would be a fire inside the stomach. The child would be placed into the stomach as if in an oven, and the child would be immolated.
Baal is described as a fertility god in most museums, universities, and books, and this description or title is justified by the well-documented infant sacrifices that were known to take place to a large metal bull deity, which was made scalding hot with a lit furnace inside of it, which unfortunately ensured that the child suffered an excruciating death.
Greek and Latin sources mention the offering of children as sacrifices by fire at the Phoenician colony of Carthage around 814 BC. The Greek historians Diodorus and Plutarch both mention the burning of children as an offering to the Carthaginians' chief god Baal Hamon.
Now, biblically speaking, Baal worship is mentioned in the Old Testament as being practiced by the inhabitants of Canaan, and that later became known as Palestine.
Homer told how mighty Zeus, or Baal as the Phoenicians knew him, cast thunderbolts on the earth and tumbled the walls of Troy with his earthquakes. The inhabitants of Baalbek feared Baal. They even sacrificed humans in an attempt to pacify him and prevent huge destructive earthquakes.
In crises of great danger, it was a custom of the Phoenicians to give freely their best-loved children in sacrifice, as a ransom to the avenging demons. Those given up were slaughtered in mystic rites.
Human sacrifice was not, however, limited to Phoenicia and its colonies. The worshippers of Baal practiced their grisly rites throughout the Middle East. In the city of Jezreel, now situated in present-day Israel, we discover further evidence. In those early days, the Phoenicians inhabited Lebanon. They were fantastic seafarers, and their trade networks extended as far as Spain, Africa, even Britain, and their beliefs followed them. In the Book of Kings from the Old Testament, Ahab was described as a notoriously wicked king. Under the influence of his evil wife Jezebel, Ahab built altars to Baal.
With Jezebel, and by the way, Baal is a variation of Baal, Jezebel named herself that because she was a worshiper of Baal. And in the Baal temples which she had, she employed full-time male and female cult prostitutes who committed sex acts in the open for everyone to watch as a part of their worship ceremony. So today, when someone engages in pornography of any form, whether they realize it or not, they're engaged in Baal worship.
The Bible tells us that children were put to death in worship of Moloch. Additionally, sexual acts were committed as part of the ceremonies.
If you go back into the most ancient times, religion has always had sex connected to it, and especially the occult religions.
Pagans practiced sympathetic magic, that is, they believed that they could influence the gods' actions by performing the behavior they wished. Their worshippers engaged in immoral sex to cause the gods to join together, ensuring good harvest. This practice became the basis of religious prostitution in 1 Kings 14:23 through 24.
The priesthood used their wives and daughters in holy prostitution to raise money and worship the god Baal.
Asherah was worshipped in various ways, including through ritual sex. Although she was believed to be Baal's mother, she was also his mistress.
The mother of the demon Baal is Anshara. That is his mother. It was believed that in order for the powers of Baal to grow, to be even stronger, Baal needed to have sex with his mother Anshara and able to unleash his full power. And so there are sex rituals occurring to replicate the act of mother and son intercourse in order to increase the power of Baal.
The actual worship of Baal was carried out in terms of imitative magic, whereby sexual acts by both male and female temple prostitutes were understood to arouse Baal, who then brought rain to make Mother Earth fertile.
The sacred marriage began with a journey and procession by the king to Inanna's temple, or it would have been called Ishtar's temple in the case of Babylon, which came after Sumer, and there would be preparation of the bride, which was actually a sacred prostitute.
The priest of a male member of the community represented Baal. The priestess or a female member of the community represented Asherah. In this way, God's incredible gift of sexuality was perverted to the most obscene public prostitution. No wonder God's anger burned against his people and their leaders.
The procession was accompanied by the singing of love songs and other festivities, and a great banquet, but the core of the ritual was an act of sexual congress between the king and the goddess figure, and this sexual union was intended to promote the fertility of the land, and it was the type of sex magic ritual that modern secret societies still practice. And occult authors, such as the late Aleister Crowley, were directly inspired by it.
Baal's victory over death was thought to be repeated every year when he returned from the land of death, underworld, bringing rain to renew the earth's fertility. Hebrew culture viewed the sea as evil and destructive, so Baal's promise to prevent storms and control the sea, as well as his ability to produce abundant harvest, made him attractive to the Israelites.
The people firmly believed that by their actions they could manipulate and control the gods. Crops were abundant, Baal was praised and thanked for his abundant rain. The prophet Hosea suggests, and Jeremiah graphically depicts, the debauchery and excesses that developed in the worship of Baal.
Herodotus wrote that the Babylonian brides were required by law to prostitute themselves at the temple for 7 days prior to marriage. In fact, in Hellenic Greece, courtesans or prostitutes maintained a social status legally and politically equal to men, while wives were reduced to servants. So just to be clear, the sacred marriage was not taboo at all, but a state-sponsored occasion, a required royal ritual in which the king played the male role of the deity Dumuzi, the spouse of Inanna, who could be compared to Venus, Aphrodite, Ishtar, and many other goddess archetypes.
Because of the sexual overtones of Baal worship, It was easy to use the metaphor of adultery or prostitution to describe the problem that such syncretism raised. The Israelites struggled with Baal worship until the time of the exile, especially after its official establishment as a state religion for a time during the reign of Ahab and Jezebel around 850 BC.
You have disturbing blood magic occurring, right? The offering of human children and infants to the demon. And then you have disturbing sex rituals occurring to increase the power of that demon. And this is the understanding of magic that these ancient Hebrews are going to have. This is what they're encountering, right? And there is a constant effort by the Canaanites and the Phoenicians to convert the Hebrews to this religion.
The Bible states that the Canaanite cults practiced these sex acts, but it had no place in the Israelite religion. Deuteronomy says that none of the daughters of Israel shall be Kadesha, nor shall any of the sons of Israel be Kadesh.
The significance of this was, this god, which is usually depicted as a golden bull with a fiery altar at its base, required child sacrifice. A holy sacrifice consumed by fire, or what the Babylonian Talmud calls Korban Olah. The Korban Olah is better known for its traditional name in the English, which is Holocaust, which comes from the Greek word holocaustus.
A literal holocaust. This is where the term Holocaust comes from, a burnt sacrifice. Okay, and these Canaanites would be doing this.
They'd be burning kids to Baal. They'd be burning kids where they'd have a big steel oven with the hands of the god. You take your baby up with a 500-degree thing and watch it fry.
The Greeks are also going to describe this ritual. Diodorus Siculus described the ritual. There was in their city a bronze image of Cronus, extending its hands, palms up, and sloping towards the ground, so that each of the children, when placed thereon, rolled down and fell into a sort of gaping pit of fire. Drums and flutes would be played at the ceremony as the infant was sacrificed to drown out the screams.
You'd fry a baby on a basically outdoor barbecue pit and then eat it. Watch the priest pull a leg off your baby and
At these ceremonies, even the most powerful families had to produce a victim to placate Baal Hamoth. According to the historian Roy Decker, they even attempted to save their kin by substituting servant children. Nevertheless, when the city was threatened by Roman armies, earthquakes, drought and famine, the high priests ruthlessly sought Baal's appeasement.
But the biblical tradition is very clear in talking about that the Phoenicians burned their babies, sacrificed their children, and there is a biblical narrative saying that this tradition also came to Jerusalem in the late Iron Age.
Numbers 3:11 through 13. The Bible's repeated condemnation of a child sacrifice shows God's hatred of it, especially among his people.
Diodorus and Plutarch and church fathers like Tertullian condemn the Carthaginians for the practice of child sacrifice.
The Old Testament strictly forbids the sacrifice of humans and the worshipping of false gods. However, like we just read, many Jews and Israelites practiced these traditions anyway. While many of these practices among the Semitic people predated Abraham, we can see plenty of influences coming from outside also. Like when the Jews escaped Babylonian captivity, they brought many of the demonic teachings with them.
We can see a constant theme of the children of Israel looking to the Canaanite deities for fertility, for prosperity with the crops, and for wealth with harvest.
It is true, because of the wickedness of the Canaanites, which included sodomy and infant sacrifice, Israel had been commanded by God to be harsh in her treatment of the inhabitants of the land. God made it clear that the Canaanites were not simply to be avoided, but destroyed.
It's hard to know why Yahweh's people failed to see that he alone had power over these things. Possibly, their desert origins led them to question God's sovereignty over fertile land. Or maybe it was simply the sinful pagan practices that attracted them to Baal.
Right? And there are going to be some Hebrews and Israelites who are going to convert over to Moloch, who are going to convert to Baal. And that is why there are such strong scripture verses in Leviticus just damning everything associated with the Canaanites, right?
We can also read about this when studying the foreign concubines of Solomon, who promoted these traditions within the various temples at that time. We also know that child sacrifice was very prominent within the Carthaginian, Canaanite, and Phoenician society, all of which were in close proximity to the Jews. A common denominator with all of these outside influences is that they all worshipped Moloch.
You say you're God's chosen people. Who exactly is your God?
When they worshipped other gods, the Bible talks about them carrying the banner of the star of their god Remphan.
At the end of Acts 6, Stephen is seized and brought before the council by the Jewish leaders. Beginning in verse 37, Stephen recounts of when the fathers refused the oracles given to Moses on Mount Sinai and instead desired to set up their own gods. Did you bring me slain beasts and sacrifices during the 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? You took up the tent of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, the images that you made to worship, and I will send you into exile beyond Babylon.
In Amos, God said, you have taken up the star, and you have actually sacrificed your own children to the star god through the fires. They sacrificed their own children, the Jews did, to the star god.
In other words, what Stephen pointed out in Acts 7 that caused early Israelites to fall into Babylonian exile was the worship of the star of Remphan, or the hexagram.
You rejected the God of the Bible. You took up for yourself the star, that's the six-pointed star, of your God, called Remphan or Kiyun. All these were names for Moloch, the great Baal, the great fire god, who was the devil.
All of these things interweave and are interwoven into each other. And what it all comes back to is satanic symbolism. You have to remember, Satan wants to be God desperately. And his fundamental mission is to basically trick people into worshiping him and or rejecting the Father, rejecting Jesus Christ. Now, the first thing that you have to realize when studying the occult and the New World Order and all these different agendas that are going on is that there are all kinds of different branches of occult study and occult teaching.
The things which are happening today, the people who are in power in this country, all of this stuff can be traced back to the planet Saturn. Saturn is a very, very pivotal, important concept in theology and religion. And most people have never been told any of this and have no knowledge of it at all.
According to Elcott's commentary for English readers, Remphan appears to have been understood by the Septuagint translators as an equivalent for the Hebrew Kayun, which is supposed by many scholars to be identified with the planet Saturn, of which Remphan, the Septuagint form of the name, was the Coptic or Egyptian name. Barnes' notes on the Bible states, quote, because the object of worship called Kayun in Hebrew was called Remphan in the language of Egypt, it is generally agreed that the object of their worship was the planet Saturn.
The Romans equated Saturn to the Greek Kronos, or Father Time, and this in turn made Saturn the god of sowing and harvest. In other words, a god that was highly revered and worshipped in ancient Rome. Some of you may be aware that bits and pieces of Saturn worship have made their way through time and are still being used today, albeit in a different context. Well, what if someone told you that was no accident or coincidence, and that it could all be traced back to a group that is still worshipping Saturn, and that group is in control of much more than most people would care to admit?
His symbol, long before the Hebrews were ever in Canaan, the symbol in Cana for the planet Saturn was a six-pointed star. Today we call that star the Star of David. There was no Star of David. It's the Star of Saturn. All of the Jewish reference books, all the Encyclopedia Judaica, you go to the synagogue, go up into Mulholland Drive, up to the Jewish University and spend 3 weeks there and look up Saturn. You'll find out that 98% of all Judaism is a worship of the planet Saturn. Gotta wake up and understand where this stuff comes from.
So in order to understand why Saturn is so important to the occult, we first need to realize that the entire world has been worshipping Saturn for thousands of years.
Saturn has been given many names in the past. It received the name Saturn from the Romans. The Romans called Saturn the god of time. When personifying Saturn, the Romans had it equipped with a scythe or sickle. In ancient Greece, they called Saturn Kronos. This means Father Time. When they personified Saturn, the Greeks also displayed Saturn holding a scythe or sickle with a large white beard.
In times of antiquity, Saturn was known as Kronos, the god of time. The story goes, Kronos was told a prophecy that one day his children would usurp him as king. After hearing this, he decided the only rational thing to do was to eat all of his children.
Jupiter was called the son of Saturn. Kronos, who had castrated his own father, Uranus, with a sickle, swallowed all his children by Rhea as soon as they were born, for fear that one would overthrow him. That was until Rhea contrived to smuggle the infant Zeus away. He grew up on Mount Ida, suckled by a goat, and grew up to overthrow his father.
It was prophesied that one day Saturn would lose power and one of his children would kill him. To prevent this from happening, each time his wife delivered a child, he would immediately swallow it. Saturn has always had a negative, if not evil, significance. Esoterically, it's associated with man's limitations, restrictions, death, and decay. His name in Greek was Kronos, the ruler of time.
Saturn, with his sickle, was associated with the harvest, the passing of seasons, of a timeless era of plenty and bounty before time, a golden age. His devouring of his children taken as an allegory for the passing of generations. That Zeus was spared this fate of being devoured can be interpreted as his generation not being devoured by time, but instead everlasting, like the evergreen tree used now as the Christmas tree, green year-round.
The myth illustrates the cycle of death and rebirth, creation and destruction. For this reason, Saturn and its rings are associated with the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail.
Saturn is an important key to understanding the long heritage this conspiracy has back to antiquity. The city of Rome was originally known as the Saturnia, or City of Saturn. The Roman Catholic Church retains much of Saturn worship in its ritual. Saturn also relates to Lucifer. In various occult dictionaries, Saturn is associated with evil.
The Roman statesman and philosopher Marcus Cicero called Saturn Phaenon, a word meaning shining. Saturn is where we get our name for Saturday, and Saturnalia was probably the most popular festival of the Roman calendar, characterized by revelry and orgy.
In the Northern Hemisphere during late December, the days are at their shortest lengths and the nights are at their longest. For those of the pagan world, this has always been the greatest time of the year to celebrate and practice the works of darkness. The pagan calendar identifies this period as the winter solstice. It was during the pre-Christian midwinter pagan celebrations of Scandinavia's Norsemen where today's Christmas traditions began. As a means of honoring the pagan sex and fertility god Yule, a 12-day celebration during the month of December was inaugurated. A large single log considered to be a phallic idol was lit on fire and kept burning for 12 days. Animal or human sacrifices were offered in the fire on each of those days. Wild, delirious reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices as drunken participants defiantly strove to make contact with spirits. 1,000 miles away in pre-Christian Rome, celebrants were paying homage to their own gods during the winter solstice. Witchcraft traditions hold that a number of pagan gods were given birth during this period, including Dionysus, Attis, and Baal, chief male god of fertility and licentiousness.
Again, we keep coming back to this. All these different areas of society are in the end focused on one thing. Satanism is Saturnism. Saturn, Kronos, Satan, Black Sun, Dark Lord, they're all the same thing.
I think the darkness associated with the planet Saturn and the occult religions of the world has to do with some actual, in fact, influence that Saturn has on the human race that the Jewish people realize that we didn't realize. And they probably got the idea from other ancient cultures that also venerated the planet Saturn.
And then, therefore, you look at religions and secret societies and Satanism, they're worshipping Saturn. Then you look astrologically, in other words, energetically. Banking is astrologically ruled by Saturn. Politics and institutions of state at all levels astrologically ruled by Saturn. Corporations astrologically ruled by Saturn. Law and court system astrologically ruled by Saturn. Science astrologically ruled by Saturn. Saturn worship, Satan worship.
But most people do not realize that astrotheology forms the foundation for virtually all religions on the face of the earth. It has to do with the worship of the heavens.
In early 2007, modern imaging technology revealed something else on Saturn that astounded scientists. The Voyager spacecraft showed a perfect geometric form over the North Pole. In October 2006, the Cassini craft found that it is still there.
The North Pole, the northern pole of Saturn, is a permanent storm which takes the form of a hexagon. And this has been found by the Cassini spacecraft, and I think the Voyager one before that in the early 80s. And the hexagon also is an expression of the hexagram, or of the six-pointed star.
It's just bizarre. It sits there kind of still. It doesn't move with the planet. The pole, there's a hexagonal feature, a six-sided polygon that encircles the pole at about 78 degrees north latitude. And it's sitting there as a set feature.
For some reason, on the North Pole of Saturn is a hexagram, a six-pointed hexagram on the North Pole of Saturn. Scientists cannot explain how there is a six-pointed star on the North Pole of Saturn, and what's even worse to try and explain is how come the Jews knew that Saturn was connected to 6 in a hexagram. Somehow or another the Jews knew that six-pointed star was somehow connected to Saturn.
And while there may be nothing to it, it's awfully strange, as we will come to see, that the hexagram, the six-pointed star, which contains in the middle a hexagon, had associations with the planet Saturn thousands of years ago.
The Star of David is a six-pointed star. Well, a six-pointed star is actually referred to by the reference works as a hex, a hexagram. Hex simply means 6.
It comes from the Jewish Kabbalah, Jewish magic. It is a symbol of dark summoning. For the occult, if you want to put a hex on somebody, or if you want to have a spirit come forth, this is the symbol that you would use. It is not. It never has been. It never will be the Star of David.
So 6 is a six-pointed star. And today the Jews call it the Star of David. But the encyclopedias will show you that a six-pointed star is a hex, and it will tell you that it was originally the Star of Saturn.
And as many have pointed out, there is an uncanny relationship with the six-sided star, with the number of the beast, 666. There are 6 points on this star. There are also 6 triangles, and a six-sided polygon, which results in 666.
Saturn is the sixth planet from the Sun. It also has a six-sided shape in its north pole. And the sixth day of the week is Saturn Day, the Sabbath, 666.
6 million Jews.
6 million Jews.
6 million Jews murdered during World War II. 6 million Jews killed during the Holocaust.
6 million Jewish men, women, and children.
And to the 6 million who can't be watching this among the 1 billion watching this telecast tonight.
So there's a lot of mysticism connected to the planet Saturn, the Jewish religion, the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion. Even Islam today has a symbol of Saturn that is dominantly important to Islam. It was a black square or a black cube.
The Kaaba, the focus of worship in Islam, Kaaba means cube. The tefillin, the cube on the head in Judaism. And when people go to worship around the Kaaba, they're told to pray in concentric circles. Remind you of anything?
Now the occult are heavy on numerology, but what I want to focus on is actually the symbology of Saturn.
Well, it just so happens that an ancient symbol of Saturn is the cube, especially the black cube.
The cube, which is a six-sided object that's related to the hexagram and the hexagon. It's like they all go together. Essentially, the black cube represents the worship of the number 6. Much like Satan worship. And to make things even creepier, we've got Saturn, which starts with SAT. It's a type of anagram for Satan. So the black cube is like coded language. It represents the number 6, like many other things, hiding in plain sight. But it could be that the black cube represents something else, like a prison. A prison for our minds, a prison for this solar system. We don't really know exactly the confines of this world, what's going on here, other than to say that we're trapped with these demons on this planet. In fact, we're at war with this darkness, this spiritual wickedness, and it's imprisoned this planet, if you will. Or this planet has become a prison.
The matrix, if you will. This prison is the flesh that we are born into. It represents the sinful worldly dimension that we currently live in, that is manipulated and controlled to an extent by Satan.
Realize, folks, these people are living and serving an entirely different reality than you. It does not matter if you don't believe this stuff. They do. And they will continue their plan to dominate the planet, keep it satanic, and remain in full control if we do not wake up. That's our responsibility.
The real truth is that the people who are in power, who put this system together, have been in power for thousands of years. This has been going on from day one.
There are those of us who really care about the truth and are trying to get to the bottom of this crap and figure it all out before we're wiped out by a satanic, saturnistic agenda.
The press does not want to talk about what's going on. America is censored. America is under censorship. America is terrorized.
Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit-trained professor of canon law, defected from Christianity and embraced the Luciferian ideology while teaching at Ingolstadt University. In 1770, the money lenders who had recently organized the House of Rothschild retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols designed to give the synagogue of Satan ultimate world domination so they can impose the Luciferian ideology upon what remains of the human race after the final social cataclysm or use of satanic despotism. The plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. This objective was to be reached by dividing the masses, whom he termed goyim, meaning the human cattle, into opposing camps in ever-increasing numbers on political, racial, social, economic, and other issues. The opposing sides were then to be armed, and an incident provided which would cause them to fight and weaken themselves as they destroyed national governments and religious institutions. In 1776, Weishaupt organized the Illuminati to put the plot into execution. The word Illuminati is derived from Lucifer and means holders of the light. Using the lie that his objective was to bring about a one-world government, to enable men with proven mental ability to govern the world, he recruited about 2,000 followers. These included the most intelligent men in the field of arts and letters, education, the sciences, finance, and industry. He then established lodges of the Grand Orient to be their secret headquarters. Weishaupt's revised plan required his Illuminati to do the following things to help them accomplish their purpose. 1. Use monetary and sex bribery to obtain control of people already occupying positions in high places in the various levels of all governments and other fields of human endeavor. Once an influential person had fallen for the lies, deceits, and temptations of the Illuminati, they were to be held in bondage by application of political and other forms of blackmail and threats of financial ruin, public exposure, and physical harm, and even death to themselves and their loved ones. The ultimate world government is the goal.
Our struggle of good and evil is as old as the tales we tell. Knowing the motivation of this evil helps us understand the direction of our timeline. The signs and logos are everywhere for those willing to see. A great deception is upon us, and understanding these signs could be the difference between awaiting the arrival of Moshiach or the Antichrist.
This is the Illuminati/Satanic movement in this country today. Americans, for the most part, are oblivious to what's really going on behind the scenes. When I retired, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea about the Illuminati. I had no idea about Adam Weishaupt. My life's never been the same since. This is all New World Order stuff. This is all Illuminati. There's those people who think there is no conspiracy. So there is a conspiracy, and I'm a conspiracy realist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. We all have to do everything we can within our power, within our means, based on our training and experience, to do something about what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, because of the Jews!
Whoa!
No! Off, Teddy! Get off!
Go.
Sorry.
Here is the bottom line. This is not an indictment against the Jewish people. Rather, it is a call for repentance and to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior.
So in 1 John 2:22, when it says, "Who is a liar but he that denied that Jesus is the Christ," what it's saying is, who is a liar but he that denied that Jesus is the Messiah. So, what group of people believes that there is a Messiah but does not believe that Jesus was that Messiah? Again, those are the Jews.
What does a Jewish Messiah look like?
A very powerful king that will establish peace and goodwill on earth. You have to be able to establish peace.
World peace.
World peace.
He says when the real Messiah makes his appearance in such a dramatic fashion that it can't be denied, then everybody will acknowledge that he's the real Messiah. And that
worldwide,
even the non-Jews, because they're all looking forward to the Messiah.
So when the Messiah comes, you're saying the whole world's going to believe on him?
Yeah. The entire world, because his purpose will be to bring the entire world to the proper observance. All the nations will stream towards Jerusalem to learn from him.
Okay.
It will initiate a period of world peace. Mm-hmm. The Messiah will be a tremendous charismatic figure with great knowledge and communication skills. He'll also be a great warrior. He will be the defender of the Jews, and he will defeat all their enemies in a permanent kind of a way.
If you listen to how the Jews describe their Messiah, they paint a perfect picture of what the Bible describes as the Antichrist. He's going to conquer the entire world. He's going to bring peace through war.
He's going to be believed on by all religions of the world. He's going to bring world peace. He's going to unite us all.
Contrast this with the teachings of Christ, who asks mankind to accept him as Savior, follow his example, and love and care for others unselfishly. There is no neutrality. We either have to choose to apply biblical concepts to our lives, or by silence and non-commitment, we make a stand against them.
This also shouldn't be of any surprise to Christians, because the Bible is so clear on the fact that Jews are the synagogue of Satan. In 1 John chapter 2, verse 23, we read the following, quote, "Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father, but he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also." Unquote. So from reading this verse, straight away it should immediately tell us that Jews who reject Christ do not have the same God that Christians do. If you want something more specific, let's consider the words of Jesus Christ, who was rebuking the Jews in his time. When the Jews said they are of Abraham in John chapter 8, Jesus rebuked them and said, quote, "If ye were of Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham." Unquote. In verse 44 of chapter 8, Jesus flat out tells them the following, quote, "Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him."
One of the strangest and most depressing aspects of Jewish history is anti-Semitism. If you think about it, arguably no people for its size has contributed more to the world than the Jewish people. Yet no people has been hated longer, more deeply, more irrationally and universally than the Jewish people.
And it's no surprise that the greatest propaganda machine in history has spread the oldest conspiracy theory in history, the lie that Jews are somehow dangerous.
Throughout history, Christians have not looked at the Jews as God's chosen people. They looked at them as a people that rejected Christ and were therefore rejected by God. For example, the last book written by Martin Luther before he died was called The Jews and Their Lies.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther, founder of the Lutheran Church, briefly describes his thoughts on this matter in his thesis, The Jews and Their Lies. He says the following, quote, "In history, therefore, they are often accused of poisoning wells, stealing children, and mutilating them, as in Trent, Wisenessy, etc. Of course they deny this. Be it so or not, however, I know completely well the full. Ready will is not lacking with them, if they could only transform it into deeds in secret or openly. Know this for a certainty and act accordingly." Unquote.
Anti-Semitism has never gone away. It just has, and I can see if you're an anti-Semite, you're going, the evil of the Jews is the closest I come to believing in magic, because they just never stop being evil. Like, I just don't understand how this never goes away. It never goes away. It's so fucking weird. Like, no matter where Jews have lived, no matter how assimilated they've been, it follows the Jews. And I mean, I know that I'm sure at least one of your listeners is like, no, the Jews follow it. But it's like, it's crazy. It just won't go away. It's a virus that won't ever die down.
It's like a virus in the church.
Jews have been thrown out of 359 different countries, nations, or states. That tells you something. Is the whole world anti-Semitic? Is the whole world anti-Jewish? Or are these people organising in different countries all over the world in a way that is not conducive to the well-being of the indigenous people of those nations? I'll let the audience make up their minds themselves.
109 countries. 109 countries. What does it mean? Well, Jews have been kicked out of 109 countries. Well, first, the number 109 is a debatable number. Jews have been kicked out of many cities and out of different countries, but the 109 number is debatable. Now it's become an internet meme, so everyone just assumes it's true.
Jews have been accused of kidnapping Christian babies to use their blood to bake matzah, of poisoning wells, of being in league with the devil, of controlling the world's economy, the U.S. government. But if we look at all of these accusations through the lens of fact and history, we see that all of them are clearly just excuses. People may believe them, but none of them have anything to do with reality.
A popular speculation throughout human history is the charge that Jews are engaged in ritualistic murder. This accusation was especially common in the medieval era, where it was alleged Jews engaged in human sacrifice and the drinking of blood, especially that of children. However, most Jews today will completely deny this and accuse you of anti-Semitism. They have even created a phrase for this type of accusation. They call it blood libel.
One of the most enduring anti-Semitic myths, that Jews used the blood of murdered Christians for ritualistic purposes, first surfaced in 12th century medieval Europe, but the lies tragically persist around the world to this day.
Blood libel, which refers to false allegations from the Middle Ages that Jews murdered Christian children to use their blood in religious ceremonies.
There were around 150 instances across multiple centuries and countries of young boys near Easter turning up dead from being crucified and exsanguinated. Clearly religiously motivated, clearly ritualistic, and the evidence always pointed back towards groups of rabbis. The expert solution is that Christians murdered their own children just to blame the Jews.
And this type of blood libel with the internet today, they become points of reference for the future. They're eternally in cyberspace and can be forever regurgitated.
Jews have paid a terrible price. They were accused falsely. Their children were murdered because of these libels.
Apparently it's not historical revisionism when they rewrite history to exonerate Jewish people from ever having committed a single evil act, but I digress.
I have to ask you one question because it's come to our attention. It's all over the internet. Remarks that you made recently to El Quds TV. You said, "We all remember how the Jews used to slaughter Christians in order to mix their blood with their holy matzahs. This is not a figment of the imagination or something taken from a film. It is a fact acknowledged by their own books and historical evidence." You believe that Jews would kill Christians to mix their blood to bake the holy matzahs on Passover? Is that your belief, Mr. Hamdan?
Well, Wolf, let me answer that freely. Don't cut me, because it's very, very, very important to be clarified. First,
Oh no. Obviously we just lost the satellite feed. That sucks.